Mr. Yo, just a clarifying question on the CIP, since I think it's something we get from constituents a lot. If something is listed but there's no funding associated with it yet,
People shouldn't give up. There's 200.
Now that we're recording, we must be ready to get started. Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, May 3rd. Regular meeting, actually, I think, of Programs and Services Committee. Tonight will be dedicated to budget. Present at the start of the meeting, we have from Ward 1, Councilor Maria Greenberg. From Ward 2, President Albright. From Ward 3, Councilor Pam Wright. I'm Josh Grinsman from Ward 4, Chair of the Committee. From Ward 5, Councilor Bill Humphrey. From Ward, that's it for the committee at the moment, right? I believe we're also joined by Councilors Andrea Downs, Rick Lipoff, and Vicki Danberg. Welcome. I will try to mention the other members of the committee when they get here, or anyone else who shows up. We have 4 departments on our agenda for tonight, starting with the city clerk's office. Second one is museum. Hopefully folks knew that in the budget book, that's Historic Newton. I know that's goes back and forth every year. We have that terminology problem. And then library, and then Parks, Rec, and Culture. So we're going to start with city clerk. Carol, are you here?
I am.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Oh, and sorry, before you get started, Carol, I noticed that the vice chair from Ward 6, Councilor Brenda Noel, has joined us. So, Madam Clerk, tell us about your budget.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Chairman.
I'm sorry. I apologize again. I think I need to read the items into the for us to get started. Item 1-23, the submittal of the FY 24 to 28 capital improvement plan. Item 1-23, parens 3, this is the submittal of the FY 24 municipal and school operating budget, as well as item 1-23, parens 4, submittal of the FY 24 to 28 supplemental capital improvement plan. And again, all the departments fall into those. So with that, again, I apologize for cutting off twice now, Ms. Moore, but please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm very proud of the work our team managed to do this year. We had quite a few challenges with being short-staffed in the beginning of 2023 and 2022. I'm sorry, the beginning of 2022. Our experienced members are working with our new clerks. Everyone is learning new processes with vote by mail, and we administered 3 successfully run elections in the last fiscal year. So the clerk's office goals for fiscal year 24 is to continue building the office with knowledgeable and helpful people, finding ways to bring technology in to assist us in our work, and getting comfortable with our new voting procedures and equipment. The budget reflects those goals. We do have a 4.6% increase to our budget, which includes an increase in election worker pay, an increase in voting supplies like postage and mailings, and a slight increase, of course, in supply costs. This year, I will continue to focus on staffing and training. I currently have a new assistant clerk of council in place. I look forward to introducing him later this month, and we do have 2 other open positions that we are currently working on filling. My budget highlights will start with the clerk of the council section of our budget. So under city council this fiscal year, we will have inaugural expenses, including with some retirements this year. You will see in software maintenance an $11,000. This is for yearly maintenance and monthly uploads into a new online code management system, which is not in place yet and was just recently docketed on the past Monday. So we'll be seeing that soon. I spoke about this last year briefly, and I'm excited to begin this project. Overall, this whole project will take about a year, and once it's ready, we of course will have training sessions for council and staff on all its abilities and uses. We move on to under archives management. Our budget for archives is mostly the same as last year, no real changes. We held 2 shredding events for City Hall departments this past year, and we plan to hold 1 next year as well. Under census records, again, no substantial changes in this department. Our census forms this year, we added some translated versions. We will continue to think of ways to reach all of our Newton residents and try to gather more information. And then moving on to the city clerk section, no real substantial changes there either. Our vital side showed a slight increase in births and a slight decrease in dog licenses. So most changes were in our elections department under the elections budget. With all our new steps this year, I'm gathering data and reviewing workloads with staff to identify if we need more staffing to keep our elections running as smoothly as it has in the past. Every team member in our office rose to the challenges this year of the new processes that were created by the Votes Act. Everyone, including our committee clerks and temp election workers, our vitals coordinators and election staff, stepped up and helped process applications and ballots to keep us on track. We will have a municipal elections in the fall and a presidential primary in March under this fiscal year. With vote by mail quickly gaining in popularity, 46% voted by mail in our special elections in March. Our office is learning to deal with a different and larger workload, shifting from the election day focus to months-long assembly line of preparation and processing. We sent out close to 58,000 vote by mail applications to every registered voter in the beginning of this calendar year. We will do this every year we hold municipal elections, as the state covers this task during state and federal election years. We feel it's the most efficient way to provide voters with the choice to participate by mail in all our elections. And any newly registered voter throughout the year will also receive a vote by mail application. And if voters change their mind throughout the year and want to apply, we do have those forms online that they can submit. Another increase in our elections department is the increase in election worker pay. I increased the pay to the state minimum wage of $15 an hour. Besides keeping up with the state law, my hope is that we may be able to recruit a few more election workers with this increase. So the voting tabulator purchase, this was originally discussed, I believe, in fiscal year 21, and I'm happy to say that the RFP was posted this past April, and we did receive one very good proposal, which we reviewed this week. It was also referred in the docket items this past Monday for council. So I believe we'll be able to set up the new tabulators, train, and have them ready for, if needed, September preliminary. And I can say that the office and our election workers are very much looking forward to new machines. So if I'd like to go over the 4 outcomes and strategies under that section, my focus, again, is still remaining on internal and external customer service, along with learning new programs and systems. And outcome 1 is increasing the levels of service We were able to update our forms with some translation opportunities and change some of our forms to more accessible fonts. We will continue to research and find ways to make residents and city staff's experiences with the clerk's office easier. Outcome number 2 is supporting staff. Training staff on the new docket tracking system that was developed by Council President Albright and senior web developer Rufin Lau. That should be released very soon. We're so close. It will help us and our residents search and keep track of docket items and council actions. And with outcome 3, we're learning new technologies and still focusing on paper reductions. So we need to utilize the NewGov program a little bit more in our office. We currently use it for special permits and now grants of locations. And we look forward to including auto dealer licenses and business certificates and possibly any other programs along the way that can benefit from NewGov. So with our new tabulators, we will have new reporting software that is customizable. And I hope to work with our IT department to create a clearer way to present election results. We now have an election worker database, which will make it easier to track our election workers and organize election day schedules and their pay afterwards. We're still working on council web pages. I wish we were further than we are, but I really want to work on our website and highlight each counselor, update their information, and make it simpler to contact everyone. And along with, I mentioned earlier, the new online code management. Again, that will be a year-long project, and you'll hear more about that later in the fiscal year. So outcome 4 is to continue to hone our processes for new voting procedures. As you can tell by how often I mention elections in this presentation, elections has taken most of our focus this year. New staff, new tabulators, new election worker database, and our new laws have made us rethink some of our old ways and the need to continue to gather data to make informed decisions moving forward to minimize burnout in staff and administer secure elections. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Certainly appreciate the work that you do, especially with elections. I know it's not up to you, but I think the counselors on this call can certainly attest that the voters have a tendency to get it right. We have been joined by Councillor Oliver, Councillor Crossley, and also on the committee from Ward 8, Councillor Holly Bryan. Councillor Wright, first question to you.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Moore, for everything that you do. I just wanted to understand a few things. So in outcome 2, you mentioned a 50% change in staff this year. That seems like a lot. And and as you probably know, it costs a lot to to train people and things like that. How do you have any plans on how to reduce turnover?
Well, it started originally, I had 3 open positions when I started, Councillor Wright. So I feel that that's part of it. I think with COVID, it kind of created a burnout when I first stepped into that role. In speaking to staff members, there was a definite stress level that was high for that. So I feel that providing training, providing support, I talk to each one of them. I like to receive feedback. I can't say, of course, more pay and a flexible schedule would be wonderful to provide to our staff members. But I hope that I can relieve some burden when it comes to workload by finding new ways for technology to ease possibly old ways that we've done. So yes, I am always keeping track of our turnover. I hope next year that I won't have to say we have new staff. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4 that were hired this year that are still here and hopefully providing me some great feedback, and they're doing some great work. So I think listening, diversity training, teamwork building, I think is the way to go in the future.
Do you have enough staff?
I still have 2 open positions right now. I'm just recently, a new assistant clerk of the council will be hired starting this month. We are in second interviews for the committee clerk position. And the elections coordinator position just recently opened up due to some FMLA issues. So
Okay.
we'll be working on that soon.
And then you mentioned a couple of times the new election laws and the new
Mhm.
voting machines. So I'm not familiar with the new election laws. Is it going to be extensive, or is it just more of a training thing? And the same with the voting machines.
So the Votes Act passed in July of last year. And what it did is it created, we had some temporary placement of vote by mail activity in place. It made everything permanent. So there are certain laws that we need to follow now where we need to provide. We can opt out by holding a public hearing out of vote by mail procedures, but that isn't a recommendation from my office, and I don't feel that
Yeah.
comes from council as well.
No.
So we're working towards creating a system with vote by mail. There are different processes when it comes to how many ways a person can vote. It will be online. Voter registration is automatic now at the RMV. So we are constantly having some duplications. They're still working the kinks out at the state level. So every time you change your address at the RMV or renew your license, it automatically registers you to vote, which comes through a system. So we can't ignore those. We still have to process them and make sure that they're duplicates before we can move on to the next one. So there are a lot more, we would say, administration steps in vote by mail and processing and getting it out. We still process ballots at the polling locations on election day. So we gather those ballots that we've mailed out, and we organize them, and we provide intake and get them organized and ready to go at the polling location. So our election workers, they do a lot more of opening mail and processing paper than they do actually the face-to-face interaction with in-person voters. So it's turned into more of a mail processing job than it used to be kind of the face-to-face interaction.
And what about the new tabulators? Is it just more of a training thing? Is
It's
it going to make things easier? I know
yes.
other ones were much older, but okay.
Yes. So as machines age, they get jostled around and little springs break and little, it just becomes they're old and they're tired, and it's time for them to, they've served us well. So we're very excited to have new machines because, one, it'll process the ballots faster as they go through, especially longer ballots like our municipal ones that are front to back. They have a larger screen so that voters, when they do come in and put their ballot through the machine, it actually, it's just a greater interaction that voters can see. Oh, look, my ballot just went through, it's processed. It gives you the check mark or the thumbs up. So it will be a huge help.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. Before I go to Councilor Downs, I want to just acknowledge we're joined by someone. Who are we joined by?
Councilor Humphrey?
No. Councilor Laredo. Councilor Laredo has joined us. Sorry. I made a mental note and then forgot who. All right, Councilor Downs, followed by Lipoff. Councilor Downs.
Thank you, Chair. I am so appreciative of this office, both for the administrative support that it provides to the work of council. And it does take a lot of organization to stay on top of requests from 24 of us, but also how difficult elections were when I was an inspector and then a warden, up until about 2016. And we had a lot of mail-in ballots in 2008 and 2016. Trust me, it was quite a challenge, but nothing like what I think they're getting now. So I fully understand some of the issues that you are probably facing in recruiting and retaining election workers. In fact, one of them lives across the street from me and still isn't ready to come back because of COVID exposures. So I wanted to ask about other possible sources of burnout since you raised that. And I can think of two that I have read about, and I just wanted to check in with you about whether those are also being faced in Newton. And one of them is public records requests, and the other one would be just that the additional work that the Votes Act sent our way. So if you could comment on those, I would be very appreciative. Thank you.
Sure. Well, public records request, we use, I believe it's just FOIA, a program. And I can speak comfortably about that program as my previous position. I was the public records officer for the city, and we did not have a system like this. So just FOIA really organizes and helps you keep track of those requests. But they come to me first, Councillor Downs. What I do is if it's something I can answer quickly, I will provide it and just close out the request. If it's something that, say, my election supervisor needs to provide some elections information, I will send the information out and they will respond back to me, but I will upload it into Just FOIA. So I feel that it doesn't burden anyone else in the office. I also work with our archivist. So she is able to handle some of our more older requests, and I work with them. But I feel that keeping it kind of, I'm the hub, and then I can just dole out for my department. It keeps things manageable. So I can say that for public records requests. We are not like the police department where we're overloaded with records requests. So it's still a comfortable amount. So as vote by mail process, I think when it comes to burnout, I still want to gather some information and some data because this will be our first municipal election with these new laws. I am not comfortable with like immediately jumping into help, we need help type situation. I like to ask staff, kind of gather my information and really think through on whether just the workflow itself needs to change, or the environment, the office itself isn't working right when it comes to the amount of ballots and mail that's coming in. We need to create a little bit more space so that we don't feel cramped. We cleaned up the elections room downstairs. My election supervisor did a great job. That's why our shredding event we held 2 this year, because we had a backlog of documentation that we could have easily removed, and it cleared up so much space. It was great. And then that provides kind of more of a clearer head. And I want to provide ways to organize those ballots by ward and precinct. Before we used cardboard boxes. So it's these little tweaks along the way to try to find ways to ease up the stress and overload that a staff member can feel. And it could be just the visual piles of census coming back, like that can stress you just coming into that. So you have to start with those tweaks, start by listening to them. I'm trying to listen to when they feel their most stress. Our office is full of ebbs and flows. I have a census coordinator. He's busy when the census comes out, and then everyone helps out, and then his job lightens up a little bit, and then he can help say our dog licenses that came out in April. So it's a real give and take in our office, and team building will be really important moving ahead, especially with just our old experienced, I don't want to say old that way, but our experienced staff and then our new staff. So I'm hoping we can all work together with that.
Councillor Downs, you all set? Did you disappear?
I think she's
Disappeared.
She, didn't even have the decency to stick around for the answer to her question. Unbelievable. I'm sorry, Madam Clerk. We've been joined by the final member of our committee, Councillor Lyle Baker. So, Councillor Baker, welcome. I know you had a conflict and did your best to get here on time, so thank you. Councillor Downs, are you back?
Yeah, yes, sorry, I'm a technical incompetent when it comes to these wireless earbuds, but thank you very much. I'm all set.
Thank you. So next I have Councillor Lipoff, followed by President Albright. Councillor Lipoff.
Thank you, Chair Krinsman. I just wanted to show up tonight to testify that I was on the search committee, and the proof of how we're doing is in the leadership of Carol Moore. She's doing a fantastic job. It's not easy to come in to an office that has run one way for so long and to put your stamp on it and to right some things that were going wrong. David Olson did a great job, but nothing's perfect. And for some of us who are in the office often, we have seen great change. There has been turnover. I would say that a lot of the turnover with the clerk positions has to do with the pay. And as we all know, the budget was tight. We asked for an override. It's hard to walk in and to the mayor's office and say, which we have done, we need to pay more for certain positions. But I think that is one of the issues. Some of the hires since Carol has come here, Jacqueline Norton, excellent hire. There's a lot of great hires. There's a lot of great people, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback from the public, some in writing, as to their experience at the first touch when you come to the counter, which wasn't always the case. So there's a lot of good going on. There's a lot of ongoing work that is continued to make the clerk's office run as best as it can be. But the progress has definitely been evident. And I just wanted to put my 2 cents in. I really don't have much to say about the budget or the structure, given I think it's moving in the right way, and that if we're going to keep clerks a little longer, we need to pay them better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lipoff. Appreciate your 2 cents, and what an appropriate metaphor given the comments you made. President Albright.
So I won't repeat all the praise that Vice President Lipoff heaped on this office, but I will agree with it. The office is really in a good place, and it's getting better all the time. The question for you, since the 2 pieces of data that you raised were that we have increased burst and decreased dog licenses, I was wondering if there's a correlation.
Well, I hope not, but I have heard that pet ownership since COVID, the pandemic has ended, has kind of, some people might have felt regret, but I hope not. I hope the pets are just, maybe they've just forgot to sign them back up again for the new year. But no, we don't, there's no sign of why that happened, but there was a slight change.
I do have a serious question for you. I'm wondering,
Sure.
in the archivist section, Mr. Hiller was doing a lot of scanning.
Mhm.
Are we still helping other departments scan their documents, or are we still doing that?
Yes, and
Okay.
I must say that Mr. Hillier helps. He is so helpful and will drop everything, especially during elections, to help us organize and just get everything in order that's coming in. So he's been a big help. But yes, he still does, when he has downtime and he's not helping us, he is helping other departments.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for, the clerk's office. And what I love about it the most of the change is that the customer service, I think, is a new face, and I think people feel good about coming to the clerk's office now, and I really appreciate that more than anything else. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, President Albright. I did notice that the dog licenses was still above the births. So, I mean, I like people, but I really like dogs. So I was pleased to see that. And I wondered if it had to do with pandemic behavior. People could get dogs pretty quickly when they were available. Generally, if you're trying to get it usually takes about 40 weeks, sometimes longer, but neither here nor there. I see Councillor Crossley followed by Councillor Humphrey. Councillor Crossley?
Oh, it's so hard to follow you, Councillor Greenspan. I really came in tonight because I am so pleased with the clerk's office and the changes that have been made. And the turnover was necessary for many different reasons. People needed to move on. We needed to move on. And the change has been, as far as I'm concerned, all positive. And I want to particularly thank Carol for finding Jacqueline Norton, who I think is I don't know is the right phrase, a diamond in the rough. I've been so pleased to have her helping with the zoning and planning committee in particular. I also appreciate, I'll echo President Albright's mention of customer service and what you're greeted with at the counter and at the door when you go to the clerk's office. It's so important to our constituents, and you're the face of the city, sometimes more than we are. So it's really just that I don't have any questions about the budget. I just wanted to send my thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Crossley. Councilor Humphrey, followed by Baker. Councilor Humphrey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm really glad to hear that we finally have the funding this year for new machines. That's something that has been a very long-standing and growing concern, and something I think I brought up in the previous 3 budget cycles, which is the amount of time that I've been on the council. And these, of course, will still be paper ballots because that's what's required by the state. But is it still going to be paper receipts as well, or what's the sort of output there?
So we will still have paper receipts. The machines will be capable of doing cast ballot. If I'm doing this right, I'm still doing some research, but they're called ballots cast, where it's digitally kept. But Massachusetts doesn't allow that, but it has those capabilities if in case we change. But right now, and it's not ink paper now, it's going to be thermal. So we won't run out of ink anymore with those machines.
Okay,
So
good.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, no, I'm all for the receipts. I just want to make sure and know, what kind of receipts we're getting and so forth. So happy to hear that. So you've talked about tonight about, how much the office is working on, how much is required logistically during elections and so forth. And so we've talked about the, state, federal, municipal elections. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about sort of the littlest elections that we have in the city, which is the area council elections. Specifically, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how many candidates have been running or elected in those recent elections? Do we have a sense of how many ballots are even being cast in those? There are only 4 area councils, so the whole city doesn't get to participate in those. And then, if you could just talk logistically about kind of what your office or any of the other departments have to do to support the area councils in their efforts.
Sure. And so, yes, neighborhood area councils, we do have 4 of them. We have Upper Falls, Highlands, Newtonville, and Waban. They hold their elections in the past few years with us during the November municipal elections. Of course, with the new vote by mail process and people voting by mail, we can't give them a mailed ballot. It can't be included with our municipal, with our state, with any other official ballots. So we are in talks. My election supervisor, John Doyle, has been meeting with them. We'll continue to work with them to try to find the best way that helps us, because our workload has increased. And it does take 2 extra poll workers at each polling location that the catchment areas cover. They have their own voting list. It's a little difficult because some people that go to that polling location may not necessarily be part of that area council. So then there's a communication issue as well. So we're trying to work to see how best we can help them out with elections, getting feedback from them to see how they could also take part in their elections as well. So I can't give you a specific number of how many ballots. I can tell you, if I look it up, that typically, I think each area council needs 9, if I'm right, Councilor Humphrey, I think it's 9.
Yes.
In the last election, there was an issue where not enough members were elected because they just didn't have, they had to have a number of write-in votes as the amount of signatures they need for their nomination papers. So that's 25. So I think Upper Falls, I think we elected 9. The Highlands, we elected 6. Newtonville, we elected 6, and Waban, we elected 8. So there was an issue where they didn't have enough write-ins to cover that election. So I do remember that. I was fairly new at that time. We also provided them help during our early elections, a table outside where we staffed poll workers. So when it comes to cost, I mean, we do provide the printing of the nomination papers, the certification of those papers. We provide the printing of the ballots, of their voters list, which could be between 60 to 200 pages. They are in, I think I can pull up pretty quickly. They're in about 12 polling locations. So, oh no, it's more than that. So we would need around 40 really quick. Yes, we would need to employ around 30 temporary election workers for that day. So there are costs included with area councils, and that's why we're in talks with them to try to see the best way to move forward. I do know that our IT department works closely with them as they have city emails and they have web parts of our web pages are included. So I'm sure that they help with troubleshooting. And I couldn't speak to them about the hours that they would spend, but there's a considerable amount. But like I said, we're going to be working with them and seeing how best to move forward to see whether they have their own election day or whether they can maybe help us out in November with their elections.
Yeah,
I would be happy to talk more about this, if we get more information.
Yeah, I think at some point it might be good to have a discussion item, but I just kind of wanted to think through the budgetary and staff impacts of having these area councils, which have been, I think, even they would have to acknowledge, struggling with recruitment in recent years. Only one of the 4 managed to get to 9 people elected. One of whom is now resigned, and a bunch of the other ones had resignations as well. And that's just talking in terms of write-ins without looking at appointments. If you exclude write-ins, we're talking about an even smaller number of people that are actually getting elected. I think, the highest number of votes that anybody in any of them got was less than 300 votes. So, I think we need to think carefully when, finances are tight about that situation. And, if they want to go and recruit a ton of people and get really involved and re-energized and everything, great. Let's have that discussion with them as well. But certainly, the city council, if one of these, really goes under completely, the city council does have the authority to, end the, that particular one if for example, they were not to find enough, candidates or any candidates in a particular year. So we should certainly bear that in mind. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to answer my questions. And, like everyone else said, we're really happy with the work that you've been doing and looking forward to seeing what the clerk's office and clerk of the council team can continue to do in the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Humphrey. Just noting we've been joined by Councilor Leary as well. Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my apologies again for being delayed, but I just want to add my enthusiastic appreciation to those of my colleagues for our clerk and her staff. I think it's really been quite helpful to see what's been going on. If you've already discussed recodification, then I will not ask about it. If you haven't, then I just think it might be very helpful to all of us to know where that is, and also the idea of getting a new software to help with the whole process of maintaining our
As fascinating
record.
as the recodification process is, we decided to leave that for you, sir. So please go ahead and ask your questions. And
So I just, if Ms. Moore will just update us on that and the new software, and maybe we have a conversation about it more extensively later, but I think it's just do you have the resources to finish the job? That's what I want to also make.
Well, the resources are going to be me. I'm about halfway through with the part. We're not doing any major restructuring or recommendations. It's preparing. What I want to do is clean it a little bit better, remove those, continue to make it gender neutral, find any other little statements maybe that are inaccurate or inconsistent. We want to clean it up for when we start the online code management process. So my goal is to get this to council in June. It is late. I know that, between the special election and doing it myself. Yes, we're going to get that soon and get it done. And like I said, there's no substantial recommendations on that. I know I've been working with Councilor Baker, Councilor Wright, Assistant City Solicitor Jonah Temple. They were very helpful too. We had a demo for online code management. They asked thoughtful questions, which helped me decide which program we were moving forward with. So yes, Councilor Baker, I am on track. I'm actually working on it tomorrow. I set aside a day a week to work on that. So hopefully soon you'll see a report after the budget.
Thank you.
thank you, Councilor Baker. Councilor Ryan.
I'll be very brief. My biggest concern was the clerk's office when I was just a constituent resident. And then when I was a council and when asked, I said, it's just not welcoming. I used to say it was like going to the registry, which is pretty bad. And in the last couple of years, it's gotten a lot better. It's so much more welcoming. And even some of the people that were there before just seem to have changed. And I think that's a big triumph in that office. And it just seems to make everything a lot smoother. I know that they're down a couple of people and they need more help, and hopefully that will come soon, and because that always has a lot to do with morale too. And I have constituents that say they don't dread going to the clerk's office anymore. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Moore, I just want to add that I touched base with committee chairs, over the past couple of days, because I know they work closely with the committee clerks, obviously, and the folks in your office. There were several very nice things that were said. People were very happy, certainly with the direction of the office. I know as you pointed out, there's an opening. And I think you've been filling in on, is it on finance? You've been filling in as well, maybe on land use type, yeah. So it sounded like you were working very hard. I feel badly that you're filling in for others and certainly need to fill those slots. But like I said, certainly, although things aren't perfect, I think that there was a lot of praise and folks are very happy with the direction that the clerk's office is headed in.
Great,
So,
thank you.
I think we made a great call. Councilor Lipoff talked about the recruitment process and the process and bringing in a new city clerk. I think we did the right thing. I'm very pleased with the work that you've done and things that you've done in that office. So I want to also add my praise to the chorus. This would be an appropriate time if someone wanted to make a straw vote motion. I believe it is $2,320,707, if I'm not mistaken.
So
I'd
moved.
like to move approval.
So Councilor Baker moves approval of that. Again, this is a straw vote. That's the way we do our budgets. I think folks have been around long enough to see that. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is 8-0. And I believe we have no resolutions at the moment. So, okay. Madam Clerk, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you again. Have a wonderful night.
Night.
The next item is the listed as museum, historic Newton. Ms. Dady, I believe you're going to tell us about the budget.
Yeah, thanks for, I always enjoy these every year. I just want to share, as you know, the sort of format of the budget book. We're delighted at Historic Newton to play our role in creating the vibrant community that is Newton. And many of you know what we do. We're a cultural resource. We're a steward of our community's character. We teach about history, not just so people can understand their history, but understand their future. It's very important at all times. And we save important treasures for posterity. But when I look at the next few pages, when we look back at the previous year and in the upcoming year, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is really how we engage with the public. One of my favorite parts of museum work is the collections work, but there's a lot of activity in how we are engaging with the public, and we are continuing something that we call Museum Without Walls. So it's not just the folks that come into the Jackson Homestead Museum or Durant Kenrick House and Grounds, but we are going out into the city. And some of the projects that we've started in the previous fiscal year, we're carrying into the next fiscal year, which is putting up history signs in various locations around the city in each village. We're working on a really wonderful documentary about education reform in Newton, which is a Massachusetts story. And we're working on a brand new, really critical general Newton history exhibit that will be at Jackson Homestead. But I'll talk about those since they're upcoming. In terms of looking backward, we achieved this year, every year I have the goal that we see 100% of Newton public schools, that children grades from every school either come to a field trip with the museums or we go to them with our museum educators and our materials. Sometimes we're still doing it on Zoom as well. And we hope every year that we're going to be having that record of teaching every single school. Sometimes we do more than one program with different grades. We tend to focus on 3rd and 8th graders. And sometimes the kids come not just to the museum, but they come to, say, for example, the East Parish Burying Ground. So the role that we have in public education and with independent schools and with other school districts, we have high schools coming from districts from around us to the museums, is important. But we serve the very youngest kids to the very most mature members of our community. And one of the things we're working on now, I'm excited about, is sort of the pre-literate audience, we call them the preschoolers. We have a partnership with Newton Early Childhood Education Program and also with Family Access. So these are some audiences that don't have all the resources. Some of the kids and families are at risk. They're really on edge. And when I was in graduate school, the director of our program said that museum work is a public service. And not everyone, not all of my fellow students necessarily thought of it that way. They loved antiques. They wanted to work with old things. But what we believe here at Historic Newton, it is a public service, that we keep our audience and how we're serving the community in mind. And so that early childhood piece is really exciting. We also, another audience is folks who are in assisted living centers. We get calls all the time from the senior center, from assisted living centers that want to have lecturers, want us to come by. And so we're really serving the whole gamut of the age range in the community. Before we go ahead and look at the outcomes for next year, in terms of the financial highlights, very, very appreciative of the 3% cost of living raise. That's those of us who are employed by the city are very pleased by that. Our budget is a modest increase. It's pretty stable each year, and it's doing just fine. I know some folks are a little confused by Historic Newton. As you said, Councilor Krinsman, what are we called? And if you think of Historic Newton as an umbrella term that encompasses the city of Newton and the nonprofit Newton Historical Society, that's one way of thinking about it. And so the $323,000 from the city is complemented by a budget from the nonprofit. And those are usually right around 45% from the city, 55% from the nonprofit. The nonprofit hasn't approved its fiscal year 24 budget yet. It will either this month or in the next month. But that's kind of how it falls out. So when we're able to accomplish everything that we're talking about, it's really from that amazing, deep, and very integrated partnership between the two. But the city, not only is the city the owner of the Jackson Homestead, and I'm always very aware that Well, we're talking about the budget for our department, city department. A lot of what happens here is also in my brothers and sister departments. Public buildings takes care of Jackson Homestead, Parks and Rec takes care of the outside. And with Parks and Rec and Culture, we steward the 3 historic burying grounds that are owned by the city. So there's a lot of resources that we're taking care of. But let me jump ahead to our outcomes, because they're pretty exciting. Something that runs through what we do is providing diverse, equitable, and inclusive access to the information we have. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it really literally touches almost everything we do. We're trying very hard to diversify the artifact collection and archival collection that we hold. When you go onto our website and look at the programs that we offer, you'll see that there's a variety that helps touch on this goal. And what's been interesting to me is some of you who've been reading the newspapers, you might read that there's a waning interest in, say, issues of diversity and equity as we get farther away from, say, the George Floyd murder or the protests after that. But we're not experiencing that. We still have, I mean, the way we gauge what people want from us is when they book a lecture, and we still have our Black history, anything related to Black history is still really popular for us. And so that's a nice trend to see that we've really doubled down on researching and interpreting 400 years of Black history in Newton, and it's still something that the audience wants. So that's an interesting trend that's continuing. And so I mentioned Museum Without Walls, and this is really exciting. I mean, we have to acknowledge that not everyone wants to learn and experience what we have inside the museums. We do have thousands of people who come visit every year, not as many as before COVID, and that's something that we're working on, is that hasn't bounced all the way back yet, the general admission to the museums. We have our lectures, our events, our school field trips, those are all very popular, but that general admission is still a little dampened. So what we decided to do, even before COVID, certainly during the lockdowns of COVID, was to go out in the community. And so one of the ways that we're doing that, I mentioned, we're putting outdoor educational signs around the city. You may have seen it in West Newton Square. We just are Crystal Lake, the Livingston Cove project there that Parks and Rec and Culture are working on. There'll be 2 signs there that'll be installed soon, any day now. We did some in Waban last year, and then coming up right now, we're working on Lower Falls, a couple signs in Lower Falls, and looking at locations in Newton Corner. So this is something that we'll be rolling out a few signs every year until we feel like we've kind of covered the city and people will run into them. And we're not only sharing what we already know and what our community partners know, but we're discovering new things. And sometimes that's through the citizen historians from the areas in which they're studying their own backyards. And that's really exciting too, to discover new things. We're working with Parks, Rec and Culture also on the electrical boxes that you see wrapped with historic images around the city. We found that people really like those images, but they're kind of mute. And so what we're adding to them is a QR code so they can come to our website and understand more about what the picture represents. And we're have the GIS expert in the department, and ID department, is helping us do an interactive map, so you can look for those boxes and a blurb will come up about that. So we're trying to use those artifacts that are already all around the city and teach a little more with those. And then the other major project is here at Jackson Homestead, there's 2 major projects running in parallel. One of the things that we have to do is that we have a very old General Newton history exhibit in our basement here. It was installed in the 1980s, and it looks like it. Not only does it look like it in terms of the technology of the time, putting push pins and foam core, there's better ways that we can do exhibitry now, but also what we're talking about is a little narrower than what Newton really is. We have really strong collections and sort of 19th century families of European descent, like my buddies behind me, the Edmonds sons, who are wonderful, and we want to tell their stories, but we want to also diversify our stories. So we're very, very pleased to have gotten $200,000 of ARPA funds. Thank you very much, from the mayor's office, that will help us toward that exhibit goal. The other parallel project is that, thank you to CPA funds, we're able to undergo right now a feasibility study with an architecture and engineering firm to understand how we can shore up the basement. It has some water infiltration problems. We have to stabilize it. and assess it as a place for exhibits and artifacts and comfort for the public as well in the future. So all of these kind of projects are kind of working together. I'm really keen to have get many products out of one effort, and so the research that we're doing for one project is working for another, and it's pretty exciting. And along those same lines, the last project I want to talk about is a documentary that we've been working on in this fiscal year, and we'll finish up in fiscal year 24. It's called An Uncommon Education, the Allen School. Some of you may know of the Allen Center over on Webster Street, owned by our friends, the NCA. The story of education reform in Newton is actually a Massachusetts and American story. This documentary will tell that. We got a major grant from Mass Humanities that understood that this is something that Massachusetts residents as a whole will want to learn more about, because it's a state that's prided itself on fostering inclusion in education and valuing education and having high regard for our educational institutions. And some of that experimental work in the 1800s happened right there at the Allen School. And many of you know that Horace Mann and some rather famous folks and Nathaniel Allen in education reform were here. We had one of the first independent, first kindergartens, first time that physical education was incorporated into a school in the way that we think of it now. So this documentary will be finished in the fall, and we look forward to sharing it with all of you and the rest of the community. So that's a major activity for us right now. And I think that's about all I have. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beatty. I see two hands up. Let's go with President Albright, followed by Councilor Greenberg. President Albright.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I love the concept of the museum without walls. So thank you very much for that, and putting signs up all over the city about the historic elements. That's really wonderful. How big is your budget totally? You sort of hinted at
Oh,
it.
sure. As both the public-private collaboration. So we have what about 324,000 for fiscal year 24 on the city side, and we'll have about it's unfinished, but we're looking at about 430,000 on the nonprofit side as it stands today. That's not finished yet, but that's a rough estimate.
Well, that's really fabulous. I had no idea that the Historic Society did that much. So that is really fabulous, and we have to thank them for that. I was wondering about the fences around the burial grounds. How are we doing with those?
So I'm really glad you brought that up. And I actually kind of wanted to ask your opinion. The South Burying Ground, which is the one down on Winchester Street next to National Lumber, we finished the fence on the north side that was falling in, and from snow plowing and from the ground, the grade degrading there. So we put in a stone wall and a fence on that side, and we'll want to do that along the National Lumber side on the south side as well. You've probably noticed if you're driving along the front of the burying ground that there hasn't been a sign. The fence there. The fence contractor took out that old chain link fence when they were working on part of it, and we had planned to put in a 4-foot high decorative fence, something a little more appropriate. We don't know if there was a fence there before or what it looked like, so we're going with a rather plain but much more attractive than chain link fence. But we've changed heart on that a little bit because we're getting feedback from the community, including I think the mayor, and I'd be curious what you all think, and people who live in that area, that they kind of like it without the fence.
I agree.
So, do you? Okay. If anybody else wants to chime in, there is on the southern end, you'll see there's a large knoll. That's the National Lumber side. Due to city ordinances, because of the drop off, we will be required to have a fence there, but it doesn't have to continue all the way up the front. I've changed my mind on this a little bit. When Bob DeRubis was my partner in crime on this, we were worried that maybe cars would end up in the burying ground if we didn't have a fence, but we do have the stone wall there. And what I am consistent on, and what the Burying Grounds Committee folks who help with this, and pretty much everyone I talk to in city government and our constituents, they like having access. And so we really do see it as another park. I mean, it's an open space place that people can visit. And so the gate has been off from that burying ground. There is pedestrian access at East Parish at Cotton Center Streets, and we're going to be propping open and keeping open the gate. It keeps getting closed over on River Street in what's called the West Burying Ground. So there needs to be some fence work on West Burying Ground. We have CPA funds that will carry us. It should actually carry us through everything we need to do at South Burying Ground. So that's our immediate concern, is to finish out the funds that were granted to us a long time ago, and we've been chipping away at over time. But great to hear that you like it without the fence.
Yeah, I think we can take away a few more fences at the various other burial grounds, and I would love that too.
So it turns out that when East Parish, the one at Cotton and Center Street, was deeded to the city, in that document, it's required that we have a fence. It doesn't say what kind of fence. It doesn't have to be a tall chain link fence, but we will have to have a fence there somehow to honor that deed.
Okay, well, something more user-friendly then would be lovely.
Yes, and just like we're putting history signs around the city, we'll do it at the 3 burying grounds as well.
Excellent. I love
Yeah.
that. I'm concerned about the water in the basement. Do you have a budget? Do you know how to fix that problem?
So yeah, so we got $75,000. CPC granted that to us, and actually the firm that we're working with is right now at around 60,000 is what they think they can do the feasibility study for. We had a lot of great advice over the last couple of years on how to deal with water infiltration and humidity problems. Josh Morse and folks on this call and other contractors and architects. We have great architects on our Buildings and Grounds Committee. So what this firm is going to do is really bring this down to a menu of options and attach actual real costs to them. And that will help us understand what we can do down there in terms of exhibits and collection storage. It is accessible technically, but it wouldn't meet what I would consider universal design for accessibility. So the firm is also looking at a lift or an elevator. This is a whole other order of magnitude in terms of expense. So that process should finish by September or October. And when we have those really detailed expert plans, that's when we can go to figure out what to do. Right now, we've pulled artifacts out and have closed down portions of it, and Public Buildings has done some work on the humidity side of things. So it's not in dire straits, but we're definitely steadily working toward improving that space and making it comfortable for people and artifacts, which is sometimes contradictory, but we can do both.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And those people that hasn't come back since COVID, but I'm going to make a point of coming back this year.
Excellent. We have new items in our store. I know you like to shop.
Thanks.
Councillor Greenberg, followed by Downs. Councillor Greenberg.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Stady. I appreciate all that you do. My vote is for no fence around the cemeteries also. Yeah. So I just ordered my historic home marker, and I received the packet with the research of my home, the 1884 home. And it was fascinating. It was I'm so glad I did it. And I really would like to promote it. And I'm just wondering how we get the word out to folks to go ahead and order one for their home. I really learned a lot about the neighborhood and my house, and I look forward to hanging it up on my doorstep. I was wondering if the historic Newton makes money with that program.
So first of all, thank you for buying one. And we do find that if you just tell your neighbors, sometimes word of mouth is the way we get the word out. We love it when neighbors get the plaques, because our researcher then can kind of do a block at once, and it kind of is a more efficient way to do the research. We have a volunteer researcher that does that, and then we have staff that kind of coordinate the whole process, and then we review her work. So since I've been here about 8 years, our capacity to do that research has grown and shrunk depending on volunteers, depending on paid staff. And so we do have the capacity to promote it and do more, as long as we have this great volunteer. And I'm really glad that you like the information, because she does do a great job.
Yeah.
So let's see, a little less than half of the cost of that is the actual sign itself, fabrication of the sign itself. And so then what's left over offsets the cost of the staff who coordinate the program. And then it is a little bit of a fundraiser for us, given that we have a volunteer researcher.
Okay, great. I'll try to promote it myself on Facebook and such.
Yeah.
And I was just curious about the tree that fell in front of the Jackson Homestead. Is that the stump going to be removed, or is there going to be replacement?
Well, that's another thing we should kind of poll the public. I know that some people kind of like the stump. It's kind of artistic to them, and it just reminds them of the tree that they loved. A lot of people, we didn't realize how much that tree was noticed until it was gone, and we got a lot of feedback. I noticed that Mark Welch is on the call here. Thanks to his work, we planted a new elm, an elm that is a special kind of elm that will survive to replace the tree out front. It's a tiny little guy. You may not see it if you're driving by very quickly, but so that was a plan to replace the tree. I guess we hadn't really thought about whether to remove the stump at this point. So that's an interesting question. You might also know if you go by that there's when the tree fell over, it knocked some of the stone wall out. And we're working again, our sister institution, Parks, Rec and Culture. Thank you to Commissioner Banks. There's some funding to repair that stone wall. So they're working on vendors right now for that.
Okay.
So that would be nice.
All right, well, thank you. And I look forward to that documentary.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Downs, followed by Noel. Councillor Downs?
Thank you, Chair. I am just so excited about some of the offerings that you're pulling together, especially the museum without walls and the outreach to all the elementary schools and the early childhood program. That is just fabulous. I'm also getting a more well-rounded idea of Newton's history and its relation to national history. It's just fascinating. A couple of quick, and I totally second the vote for no fences at the Southern Burying Ground. That it's so nice to be able to look in and see it, and you know, I don't think people have quite gotten the idea yet they can walk in. I certainly haven't. So the question about the walking tours, are they scheduled with a docent or are they DIY?
Walking tours are they are either staffed by one of our staff, our museum educators, or we invite experts in. So for example, for 1 year we did kayak, biking, and running tours, and the guy who led it's usually Clara Silverstein, our community engagement manager, partners up with the expert, but the fellow on the bike tour had written a book about bicycle history in Newton and Boston, and so it's a share of our expert staff and invited experts, and they're led tours. Yeah.
Excellent. I'm so sorry to have missed the bike tour of Newton.
We'll
do it again.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll be on a weekend I can do. And the other question, so just appreciation for everything you do. I just have a question that is probably better answered by our CFO or COO, and that is because I notice it in more than one budget. Your item, your electricity, natural gas, and water and sewer service numbers show no increase from 2023. And knowing what my bills look like, how is that possible? Is my question.
Perry is here as well, Perry Rosenfield, our
I'm glad we have the
analyst here.
experts.
I think what we do is we're certainly looking at the new contract prices, but we're also looking at historic use. So sometimes there is no change just based on where spending levels have been. So if they don't need to be increased, they're not. But sometimes if use is staying constant, for example, and electricity prices are going up, then yeah, we're going to put more. You'll see in some other budgets here that there are increases and decreases depending on which utility, whether it's diesel, gas, electricity, or natural gas. So we're every year, Maureen, with the help of Perry and team, Connor Roach is here as well from that Financial Services. look carefully at the usage numbers too. So,
Mm.
yeah, it's all closely tracked.
Great. I am, that's great. I'm all set, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Noel, followed by Wright. Councillor Noel?
Thank you. I just want to add on to Ms. Stady that I was so impressed and so appreciative of the work of the background work you did on the city seal. And I think that, folks just don't realize just what a gift it is to have your expertise and your leadership in the city. I was just blown away by that work and the understanding of the city seal. So thank you so much for everything you do.
Well, really appreciate that. And one of the things I didn't mention, I did mention that I like to get many uses out of the same work. And since we were doing so much work on Indigenous history during that time, we ended up putting up an online exhibit. COVID nudged us in that direction. We also have a small exhibit here at Jackson Homestead addressing Indigenous history and the story behind the seal and that sort of thing. So it's nice that people can access that in different ways.
Excellent. Thank you. I thought it was fabulous. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wright, followed by Danberg. Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Chair. I just like to say thank you so much for the thorough information. You answered all my questions. And I'm in West Newton Square all the time, and I see people stopping and reading the sign there talking about the square and the historic. So I see people all the time reading it, and I love it. I hope we get more of those all around the city. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Councillor Danberg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I first of all want to thank you very much, Ms. Stady, for this lovely presentation. And regarding fences, if there is a need for a fence at Cotton Street, I would like you to consider looking at fences made by MassCore. The prison system in Massachusetts does great work in benches, park furniture, street furniture, decorative signs, and has done a number of wonderful fences for a number of communities in Massachusetts. I am having MassCore, where I'm working with MassCore and the city in getting signs for the Union Street, Beacon Street path, and they have excellent capability to design something on computer and produce it for a much lower cost than I was able to find anywhere. And it also has the added plus that you can go directly to MassCore as a municipality, and you do not need to go through the process of getting 3 bids if it's over a certain amount, which a fence certainly would be. I happen to have a catalog from them online and would be very happy to pass that on to you if you would like to take a look at it. And I would encourage you to take a look, and for other projects in the city, as well as for the Newton History Museum, take a look at MassCore and see what they could do for us. Thank you very much.
Great. Yeah, definitely send it along. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 2 more. Councillor Baker, followed by Humphrey. Councillor Baker?
Thank you. I want to echo my colleagues, but also just ask how the Durant Kenrick facility is working out with the addition and the space for community work as well as for school groups.
So the folks that worked on that museum, which was finished right before I got here, about 2 years before I got here, I always sing their praises because the addition on the back, that multi-purpose space, was brilliant. It gets a lot of use. I mean, of course, we use it for some of our programming, but we have people renting it, and for city departments, if they need the space during time, we already have staff there. We give it to city departments comp, so they hold meetings there, public meetings, staff meetings. It's pretty active space with rentals. Again, we're looking to see that come back up after we were closed. But we're going to have a plant swap in June. So the outdoors is another place that we feature. Many of you know who've had a chance to walk around there. It's just a beautiful site, both behind and next to the museum. So what's interesting is that it was a soft opening, I believe, in 2012, and then opened in 2013. So the building was finished around 2012. We're actually seeing a little wear and tear. This is something on the nonprofit side. It's owned by the nonprofit. Looking at our budget for capital expenditures, you wouldn't think that something that's only 10 years old is seeing wear and tear, but it is. So there's a little bit of that as a challenge. But my goal, we actually have a vacancy in that space. That I know vacancies are something that all of us department heads are thinking about. Someone just left to go on to Historic New England. She's been with us for 6 years, and with the new person, the charge is really to continue to bring that place to life. It's an incredible treasure for the city. The fact that it's so useful in so many different ways. And so that person will be doing a lot of community engagement, a lot of events, a lot of programming. So I think that will increase over the next fiscal year even.
Thank you very much.
And thank you all for your role in helping that happen.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm sorry in advance for this, but I do feel I have to respond to the comments that just came up regarding the prison labor system in Massachusetts. This is actually something that we talk about every year in the finance budget meetings for the purchasing department. There are certain things that the city basically is compelled to purchase from the prison system because of the procurement rules. But if you have an opportunity to not do that, I would take the opportunity to not do that. They get paid less than $1 an hour for those products and services that they're providing. Not really given a whole lot of choice in the matter, even if they are very nominally compensated. It's significantly undercutting what I would term the real economy outside of the prison system, to say nothing of the unions. And again, I understand the purchasing rules that come up with, certain procurements in the city. That's why the city council's business cards and that kind of thing are printed through the prison system, which I morally disagree with. But I couldn't let that go by, because I really don't think that it's compatible with the legacy and mission and history of Historic Newton as an organization and the values we're trying to promote. So I'm again, I don't like getting into those kind of discussions with my colleagues in this way, but I didn't want to let that go by. So thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Your hand is still up, but I assume that's a remnant. Okay. I just want to add, I think Ms. Dady, in your initial description, you talked about adding QR codes on those boxes in the historic prints. I think that's fantastic. I'm really excited about that, as well as the personally the signs you said you're going to be putting up in Lower Falls. That's my neck of the woods.
Yeah,
so
and there'll be
thank you.
QR codes on I'm not sure if they're electrical boxes, traffic boxes. They'll be in both, so that people can dive deeper if they want to and learn more. And more people are learning how to use QR codes. Now that I think the watershed moment, I'll cop to this. I mean, I'm just middle-aged, but we have a lot of people who are older than me. Once we realized we could just point the photo at the phone on the phone at the QR code, we realized this we can do this.
Yeah. Once someone shows you once,
yes,
it's usually pretty easy to replicate. So
the museums adopted the QR when the QR code first came out. Museums got really wild about them, and then it seemed like commercial interest took them over, and you had to have an app, and it seemed like their use became almost obsolete. And now I see it coming back on the rise again. It's fulfilling what we thought early on was the promise of letting people quickly go deeper to learn more. So thanks.
Councillor Danberg, you trying to get back in here? Sure. Councillor Danberg.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make a comment on my colleague's comment from Ward 5, Mr. Humphrey, and that is that he may feel that having MassCore do work for municipalities is taking advantage in some way of the people who are doing the work. But I'd like to point out that when a DPW person and I and the artist who designed the signs that we're going to be using in or having produced for Union and Beacon Street. When we spoke with the people who will be doing the production, they commented to us that they had learned tremendous skills with the technology and the computer program and the and in the work that they had done, that they were looking forward to in getting good employment with when they left the system, and they do leave the system, and so they take skills with them. Although the cities and towns get a discount on the products that they receive from them, we are giving, the Commonwealth and Mass Corps is giving very valuable skills to these people that they take with them.
All right, thank you. Well, it feels like maybe we're straying off the topic of the historic Newton budget. Maybe Councillor Noel is going to get us back with a motion that possibly touches on the number 323,853, but I don't know. Councillor Noel.
Yeah, there's no such luck. Although I'm happy to move it after I make my comment. Listen, guys, we cannot, you know, exploiting people through labor and then expecting them to be grateful for the skills they learn is like the probably definition of white privilege. You know, it's like saying that somebody who's incarcerated or someone who's some type of slave is learning skills. It's not appropriate. It's just not appropriate. Sorry, just trying to get my head back in my body. Okay, so I'd like to move this item with the numbers that Chair Krinsman just stated. Happy to move it.
Okay, I think we're all glad your head is back in your body. That helps. Hopefully it is not inserted into inappropriate areas of your body. Hopefully it is firmly out in the open, seeing everything that's out there. $323,853 has been moved by straw vote. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? 8-0. Thank you, Ms. Dady.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Next budget on our agenda is the library. I believe Ms. Mercurio is here, our fabulous director. Didn't mean to insert my opinion there. Sorry. Ms. Mercurio, why don't you go ahead and present your budget, and then we can all tell you how wonderful you are. Did it again. I'm sorry. Present the budget and we'll see if there are questions.
Thank you so much. Good evening. This is honestly one of my favorite meetings of the year because I'm so proud of the library and I love talking about it. I'm joined by several of my members of my board of trustees tonight, so thank you for joining us. Library funding is always so important to carrying out all of our important activities. This was a remarkable year for the Newton Free Library. In August, we concluded an 11-month construction project to open a beautiful, expanded, renovated, colorful children's room. It's now properly proportioned to support just the insane amount of activity that happens in that space. The room has nearly doubled in size, and the Storytime room is 3 times larger than it was before. We welcome over 150 people to Storytime each morning, and the new children's room activity area is always busting at the seams with little ones playing and caregivers chatting with each other. So it's a great community space. If you haven't seen it yet, please come by. The renovation was really transformational. So far this year, the children's room circulation is up in some areas of the collection 30%. It's our fiction collection or nonfiction collection, the world language collection, it's flying off the bookshelves. And our program attendance is actually up 118% from last year, due in a large part because that new program room can handle churning out programs, multiple programs a day. We no longer need to restrict admission into Storytime and hand out tickets. We can accommodate the big crowds, and it's a joy for the staff and for the public. Last fall, we also finished a major reconstruction of our parking lot, thanks to DPW. This helped to address the stormwater infrastructure. It's been raining a lot over the last couple of days and weeks. We're A-okay on that front. There's more parking spots, new lighting, a pedestrian walkway, and honestly, we're so grateful for the extra parking because our visitation is up 31% this year. We've welcomed over 328,000 people into the building since July. And we're the busiest Minuteman library, and that's for circulation, for holds fulfillment, and returns processing. Our residents have borrowed 1.6 million items, and our digital circulation grew another 10% so far this year. And that represents about 32% of our overall library borrowing. So just as we've revamped the physical appearance of the building and the parking lot, we also spent a lot of time this year working on our technological infrastructure. Today's library runs on technology, and I have two amazing IT staff members that maintain a fleet of over 200 computers for the staff and the public, in addition to our audiovisual equipment, our automated sorter, the RFID checkout pads at our service points, and so much more. We added air conditioning to our tiny server closet and rolled out new self-checks this year for the public. We also have launched a brand new public computer management system and printing system. This PC management and printing system was a really smart investment. It's ultimately going to pay for itself and reduce our overall annual software subscription fees. And this morning, we actually started the installation of a new audio system in the auditorium space. Our fiscal 24 budget has increased 3.92% from the previous year. And this budget will allow us to maintain our accreditation with the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. And that's really important because it allows Newton residents to borrow materials from any library in the state. And it also helps us receive state grants. We are incredibly fortunate to have an amazing team of staff here at the library. So it makes sense that most of the increase to our fiscal 24 budget goes to personnel. It helps us fulfill the terms of their union contract. We experienced several retirements last year, which gave us the opportunity to reimagine our department's organizational chart to better meet the needs of today's library. So this fall, we worked really closely with Human Resources and signed an MOA with a union that allowed us to move back to a 4-department structure. We rewrote all of our job descriptions. They were really out of date, talking about old formats that we don't circulate anymore and really specific things that just don't happen in the public library today. We were able to move positions thoughtfully into the areas we need them the most. So more staff in our children's room, more hands to help us with our technology around the building, and to tighten our supervision and reporting structures. You may have noticed our total FTE count went down by 2, but please rest assured this is actually a more accurate representation of everyone who is working to keep our library humming and not a reduction of staff. This year ahead, there's a lot to look forward to. Just around the corner, we're going to bring back our teen study nights. That will be on June 12th, 13th, and 14th. This is a special time of year where we roll out the carpet for our high school students to prepare for their finals. We stay open till 11 p.m. We have food, school supplies, de-stressing activities. And in the past, we've welcomed 300 to 400 students each night into the building. We haven't offered this since before the pandemic, which means that no current high school student has ever had the opportunity to study with us for those nights. So we're really excited to bring that back online. With more visitors flocking to the library, we're constantly looking at upgrading our study room furnishings. We are looking forward to rolling out exterior holds lockers on the Homer Street side of the building near our book drop. And that will give a lot of flexibility to our borrowers to decide when they want to pick up their hold materials outside of our regular library hours. My library staff is conducting targeted outreach to offsite locations through Newton's Villages this year. And that's been a big part of growing our card holder numbers. About 3,000 new library cards were added this year. It's exciting to go out and tell people that with their library card, they can get free museum passes, borrow from our collection of Library of Things, enjoy free programming. It's just great to meet people where they are and tell them what the library can offer. While it's not on the agenda tonight, I am really grateful and beyond relieved that there's funding coming our way to replace and upgrade our library's 32-year-old HVAC system. People regularly seek out the public library as a safe, free place in both the winter and the summer. We are a heating and cooling center, so this will make a profound difference in our ability to provide a comfortable environment for visitors and staff alike. We're also looking forward to working with public buildings, DPW, and Parks and Rec on upgrading the surface material on the front Homer Street courtyard to something more accessible, more durable, easier to care for in all weather conditions. Last year, we conducted a very successful pilot to remove library fines on our youth services materials. And I'm delighted to share with you this evening that we're going to be able to go completely fines-free for all library borrowers in 2024. This step puts us on par with Boston Public Library and nearly all of the other Minuteman Library Network libraries, our neighbors. It's an exciting step to remove access barriers and make the library really a welcoming destination for all of our users. We have a lot to look forward to in the coming year. My staff are ready, they're eager to serve, and I'm really happy to take any questions that you may have about the library or about our budget.
Thank you very much. You touched on it briefly, but do you want to say a couple more things about the Library of Things? It was something I was unaware of until the spring fling the other night, which by the way was fantastic. And I know there are a few counselors on this Zoom who were there, and you probably know, but we are the ones who really care about the library. Setting that aside, do you want to just talk about the Library of Things for a second?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So this is a really special collection of items to borrow, non-traditional, not books, not magazines, DVDs, video games. This is stuff that helps people make their lives easier. So it can be everything from a laptop and a hotspot kit. It can be a sewing machine or a thermal heat gun to check if you have drafts in your house. We have soil testers, we have bicycle repair kits. There's just a ton of stuff in there that's designed so you can have fun with your family or do a household project without spending money or finding a new place in your home to stash something you're not going to use more than once.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry to put you on the spot there, but I appreciate it. I thought that was fascinating. I see President Albright followed by Councilor Wright. President Albright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I love the Library of Things. I borrowed it. I'm involved with a project with my brother of digitizing all of our family pictures from the late 1800s on. And I borrowed your digitizer, you know, and it was fun. It was great. I have a quick, and I wanted to tell you that I love Libby, the app Libby, and the ability to the audiobooks. I don't have time to sit and read a book, but whenever I'm doing something else, I can read a book, and I'm always waiting to get back to when I can put those things in my ears and listen to a book. So I love that app. I wanted to ask you about the tween room, what the usage is.
Oh, sure. Honestly, through the pandemic, the teens, borrowing of materials skyrocketed. They were reading more than ever, surpassing our adult readers at home. They are very active in coming to programs. That space really is hopping. It depends on the time of day you come through, but even in the morning, we have a lot of groups that come through that visit that space where they feel most comfortable. So it's a lot of adults with different disabilities who come there and ask for the staff, want to look through all the books there. So there's something there for young audiences and older audiences. And it is really actually very well used, but you might time it. It depends if it's a morning where the kids haven't woken up yet, or if it's an early release day, you never know what you're going to find.
I see. Okay, well, thanks very much for that. I do have a question about the budget. The part-time hours, less than 20 hours and greater than 20 hours. There was a big change in decrease in the less than 20 hours part-time staff, and then a change up in the greater than 20 hours staff. So can you tell us about that?
Sure. So the greater than 20 hours, we have a couple staff that are prorated union member employees. And I believe the last year's budget, there was more money put in that line, but we're really using it for our under 20 hour a week staff. So it just sort of moved from one area to the other.
Okay. So is there a net, it feels like there's a bit of a net decrease though in part-time staff.
Yeah, a little bit has gone down there. We were pretty conservative during the pandemic when not as many items were circulating. So we weren't filling all of our part-time hours. But now with circulation rebounding, we've brought more people on. But that FTE count is actually for more hours than so much people. Some staff that might come in work 5 hours a week with us. They're a high school kid and that's what they can fit in. Or some might work much more. We have a lot of folks that join us from the Elliott House, the Riverside program, and we've actually been able to give more hours to them. So we're definitely keeping a close eye on it, but it's now more in line with how we have been spending our part-time hours.
You feel like you're in a good place with respect to part-time hours?
Yeah, actually, I do. It sounds odd, but it's more reflecting what we have been doing. And so it's still comfortable, and we are in the process of bringing on a few more folks.
Okay, good. And my one last comment has to do with your sound system. I think you have a new sound system.
Indeed, we do. There's always something to replace around here. So yeah, we had some challenges with audiovisual equipment we don't often put programs on in our atrium space. But we are putting a new sound system this week actually in our auditorium. So the place where people are normally going for programs will also see a much enhanced sound system.
All right, that sounds good to me. Thanks very much for all the work you do in the library. I love it.
Thank you. And I will also mention, if you found family photos at home that just the quality isn't that good, in our new printer scanner system, it has a photo restoration app. And it's astounding what it can do. Old grainy pictures, it could be, old color pictures from the 70s that suddenly are crystal clear, or black and white photos where you can't see a family member in the background, and all of a sudden it's totally enhanced. So that's free to pop in and use, and it's pretty cool what it can accomplish.
Excellent. And what am I asking about? Tell me where it is and what it is.
Yep, so it's in our computer tech center, and it is, the program's called Vivid Pick, but you can just ask if you want to restore a family photo, and the staff will help you do that.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. Does it do touch-ups, or is it gonna because I have old photos of me, but if it's gonna just do an accurate, then I'm not sure.
It might make you even clearer.
Councillor Wright, followed by Downs. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair Krinsman. I have a question. So I was looking at and kind of following up on President Albright. So I'm looking at, the full-time salaries, and you went down a head count by 2, but the salaries increased 8%. So I was wondering, there's a discrepancy there. What happened? I didn't know if you hired some people who are at a higher level or what exactly happened.
So we have, so the reduction was more on the part-time side of the house, not the full-time. A lot of our staff is union, and they had a lot of COLAs and adjustments. The salary scale changed for those folks. We've had attrition, but it means more that folks have been joining us on lower levels of the pay scale if our tried and true librarians maybe have retired from us. So it's more to do with the union contract changes than many other things.
Okay. And one of the things which I think is great is that you said 40% of your electricity is by solar, but the cost for electricity is the same. So I would have thought it would have gone down, and it's not that much less than previous years?
Yeah, our funding for our utility lines is held really steady. I think that Jonathan really touched on that pretty well. Costs have gone up in some areas, but there is still the solar that's been helping.
Okay,
Yeah, the solar has been going now for a few years, so it's from last year, it's not a big difference. I think the challenge right now with their system is that their HVAC system is struggling.
okay,
And so it's not efficient anymore. And so and it's not providing the cooling in particular in the summer that we need. So we're looking forward to going all electric there in the future and getting off gas, and which is also an exciting development to do there. So we'll be looking at what the electric bill and the gas bill will look like in the future.
okay, thank you. A question about in here, the Library of Things. It says the DPW States Recycling Dividends Grant. What is this that helps pay for that?
Sure, it's a special grant that's available to DPW departments if they had a lending library for tools and things like that. That's hard because DPW doesn't necessarily normally rent their stuff out, so they partner with us to add certain tools and items that help our Library of Things collection. So it was actually like a beautiful partnership. The state lists a whole bunch of things that you can buy, but they're pretty flexible on that. But a lot of the gardening and household tools, that's how they came to be part of that collection.
Oh, that's great. Quick question. I know you have musical instruments. Do you have bagpipes in that?
We do not have bagpipes.
Okay.
We have keyboards and ukuleles and all sorts of stuff, but we don't have that.
Okay, because I wanted to pick up bagpipes. I wanted to try it first.
Councilor Wright, if you're looking to move to reject the budget, I would understand.
And the other thing you wrote in here in outcome 3, reinvigorating programming to support job seekers and small business owners. So what examples or what are you doing to do that?
Yeah, sure. So we've been partnering with a group called SCORE for a number of years. During the pandemic, they were virtual, and it took us a while to get them back online meeting regularly. So they're a program that helps pair business professionals with people who are starting their business and provide a lot of mentorship for that. So they come here, I think, twice a week and hold appointments to help people grow their home businesses. Then we also, the job seeker side of the house, we have a whole series. Every month there is a different theme. It might be from fixing up your resume to interview skills to how to hunt for a job or network. So we have a whole series that meets monthly. That's virtual, but we're also have done resume writing and other programs in-house that people can stop in and participate through that way.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilor Downs, followed by Leary. Councilor Downs?
Yeah, thank you. I've actually used SCORE, although I don't believe it was at the library. I think it was at the senior center at the time, but they're very helpful. I'm not going to say how wonderful you are because we have a long night ahead of us otherwise. Apologies. There's so much I'm excited about, but I have 2 budget questions, so let me cut to the chase. The fines free pilot and going fine free, which of course I love. Not that we ever have an overdue book over here, but we're a known quantity at the front desk. Let's just put it that way. When my husband occasionally loses something, you've had staff who've stepped in with more junior staff and says, as a percentage of what they take out, this is actually very good. You don't have to freeze their account. But I'm wondering what the dollar impact is on that. For your budget. Does it, how much is that worth to?
So fine revenue has actually gone down quite a bit. So a part of that is because there's more auto renewals. The system will automatically extend your checkout period if no one's paying.
Love that. Yeah.
Super convenient for folks. with more people borrowing digitally, you don't get a fine on an audiobook that you downloaded on Libby. So it's honestly gone down quite a bit over the years. And the twist of it is that when there's not fines, people end up bringing things back a lot more. What happens sometimes is when people check something out and they're like, oh no, I found this under the bed and now I'm embarrassed and I don't want to bring it back. When we went fines free in our children's room, we received more stuff back that we didn't remember we had. People just weren't afraid to come forward. And I always try to reassure people and say, the library does not hold grudges. We want you to enjoy the services, the collection. The most important thing is that people do end up bringing it back so the next person can love it. And so we still will charge for if something gets damaged or completely lost, but we're not going to ding people for bringing it back a couple days late. 92% of our books come back on time. So it's a really pretty small margin that's not making it back to us.
Okay, I'm taking notes because I want to remember this. The other question I had for you was on, I noticed you have a line here for pest maintenance, and I noticed that's not funded every year. And I was wondering what the story was behind that.
Sure. Relatively recent, there were some rats that were seen by our swale. They were looking for a water source, and we do have one adjacent to the building. So that is just to make sure that things don't get out of control there, and we don't want any extra critters in the building, just people.
I'm relieved it wasn't bookworms.
Oh, me too, for sure.
I once cleaned out a house of a relative and went to pull the book out, and there was just dust behind the binding. And I was like, oh, bookworms are real. They really are real. One other thing, building maintenance at 1% increase worries me. I know you're getting a new HVAC system, but is that enough? Really?
Yeah, the 32-year-old building does show signs of wear, depending on where you're looking. But I think that a lot of the improvement money that is coming our way isn't reflected in the city budget documents before you. So fixing the plaza, the HVAC is huge. It's just not counted in that money. So we're doing well in terms of keeping things in good condition here, and done so many replacements of carpeting and painting and different repairs. So we always want to make this building look as beautiful as the community deserves. But right now, most of that funding wouldn't show you in that 1% number.
Yeah, I remember that central stair that carpet there got a lot of wear.
Yes.
And was replaced very quickly after the building was new. And, you hate to see that. All right, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much.
Councillor Leary, followed by Baker. Councillor Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm not afraid to tell Ms. Mercurio how wonderful she is and how great the library is. I'm not a member of the committee, so I think I don't have any questions. I just want to say that the Newton Free Library is really a shining star of the city, and you're right to be very proud of it. I'm very proud of it. I think we all are very proud of it. How much it offers to the citizens of Newton and to other visitors as well. We're very, very fortunate to have it. And I think you're meeting all your outcomes. And you guys know how to throw a good party too.
Well, what's not to be happy about at the library? I appreciate it all. Honestly, it's your library, and you should be proud of it. And we want everyone that comes through the doors to just feel good about using it and spending time here.
Yes.
And help us do that.
Well, we're happy to. And Councillor Wright's comments about the reuse and the Library of Things. I know that DEP, Mass DEP does give grants for that because they want to encourage reuse, repurposing, and also repair. I was wondering, at one point the library did have repair workshops. for people to come in and fix small home appliances or other kinds of things to continue the idea of reusing and not buying things new. Are you doing any of those, or is that
They
something
were
that?
really popular when we did them. We're in the process of bringing on a new person that will help us with our adult public programming. So we'll make a note. Yeah, it'd be fun to bring those back. They brought a great crowd, and who doesn't have something at home that they wish worked
Right.
better? So.
Right. The only thing I would say is that I feel like more Newton residents need to know how many resources the library really offers. I think a lot of people don't know that. That library of things, when we talked about it during the library fundraiser, was amazing. And just my other thing is I've always enjoyed the events at Drucker Auditorium, public speakers, the Green Newton speaker series. Is that back in swing, that auditorium?
Yeah, so that's the space I was just describing as getting that audio system
Okay.
overhaul this week. But we are hosting programs in there regularly. Hopefully by the next time you join us, you'll be dazzled by the sound.
I hope so. Well, thank you so much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Councillor Baker, followed by Ryan. Councillor Baker.
Just quickly, I very much regret missing the party because we had to be out of town, but I helped sponsor. And I just wondered if they recorded the talks, and goes to the question of just preserving what the library does. And I don't know if you know the answer to that. And then I have a question about the library of things.
Yeah, they didn't record the talks. We have had some versions that have been recorded in the past. But if you haven't seen Dr. Waldinger's TED Talk, he wrote the Happiness.
Right. No,
book.
that's the one I was very interested in, but.
Oh my goodness. His TED Talk is wonderful. And there's a newer version that he did after the success of the first one that came out maybe a year ago. It's definitely worth watching. He was great and local. So maybe we can corner him and bring him back again.
Then the other comment is really to Mr. Yo. Seems to me the library of things and the DPW recycling efforts offer an opportunity for cross-selling somehow to save people from putting things in the trash or buying things they don't need and then throw away. So anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for all you're doing.
Thank you.
Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I was wondering, unfortunately, I couldn't come to the gala the other night, but I was wondering, in the past, and unfortunately, I'm a little out of touch with the library too. So I was wondering if you still have that space for LGBTQ youth, especially now with what's happening in the country. And 2 days ago, one of the surveys came out on, well, not a survey, but that 40% of LGBTQ youth today, because of the political climate, was done a different way, focusing on that, have thought of committing suicide because of what the adults are doing. So I just wanted to say that those spaces are so important today. And I was wondering if we were still doing it, if people were taking advantage of it, if it's vibrant, and so on.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that and pointing out. We have a very vibrant set of programming specifically to bring young people together. So they might share reading a book about LGBTQ characters. It's a safe, comfortable space. And I think you see that a lot in the teen room, and they need it, and they use that collection and take advantage of those programs in a way that just warms your heart. We have a lot of great things planned for Pride Month next month. We really are just delighted to have those kids feel like we are their safe place.
Okay,
And
and
you can see us at the library anytime. We'll show you the library of things. I'll give you a grand tour. It's pretty great. We'll throw other parties. Don't worry.
I just, it's the time and all that. But the other thing was, I think it's three books or 4 books that were donated in my name from the Newton Human Rights Commission when I was the first person from my community to be on that commission. Mayor Warren appointed me. But I was wondering, have you yourself or anybody in your staff been contacted to ban books, to take them off the shelves?
Yeah, great question. This has been a particularly challenging year to be a public librarian. There has been a lot of challenges throughout the country and across Massachusetts. We, knock on wood, at whatever desk you're sitting at, haven't had very many challenges against collection items, programs, or displays here, which is wonderful. The community enjoys this library, understands that there's something here for everyone, and that's important. We still train our staff regularly on how to be prepared if someone has concerns about an item that has been discovered. And in many cases, it's making sure that we find something that fits that person's sensibilities better, but we're not taking things off our shelves, because we know that the book was found for a good reason and added to the collection because it's important for someone. So it's a great question, very timely in the age of libraries today. But I have to say, it's another reason I'm so proud of our library and our community, that the collection is well used and respected for what it's trying to achieve.
Thank you. And I'd just like to say thank you for being a gatekeeper for free speech.
Thank you. It's a role we've done for many years, but it's more important now than ever.
Yeah, thank you. I'm done, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands. Councilor Humphrey.
Well, I'm happy to move approval. I just wanted to note that I was, obviously a very passionate supporter of the library and patron of it, but also I was happy to see the statistics showing the, when people are coming to it, and especially how much there is on Sundays of people coming in, because, we had some concerns about the future of Sunday library hours at the, worst crisis point in the pandemic. So I just like to see that, and I'm happy to move, well, I guess it's not approval, but recommend it to the full committee of the whole.
You recommend a straw vote of yes on the $6,389,766 budget?
That's correct. Thank you.
Terrific. Any discussion on that motion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mercurio. And I see a number of folks who are on here clearly to support the library. So thank you all for the work that you do.
Thank you.
The last budget of the night, I think this one will probably go pretty quickly. Parks, Rec, and Culture. Commissioner Banks, I saw you on here. I believe you were going to tell us all about your glorious budget.
Hi, good evening to Programs and Services, Chair Krinsman, many of our other city councilors, President Albright, great to see you here all tonight. I do have a bit of a presentation, so I hope you've saved a little bit of energy for it. It's been actually quite entertaining and great to see the other departments present their budgets as well earlier this evening. Before we begin with the presentation of the Parks, Recreation, and Culture budget, I did want to clarify one piece of our budget, and this might be sort of a burning question that may come later. So I thought I'd address it right at the top of the meeting here. Our budget, the way that it appears in the budget book is showing a 10% budget increase. And that is not really the actual budget increase the way that appears there. So just wanted to give a little bit of background information about what's actually happening with some transfers of budgets. And so we have 2 waste collection specialists that their salaries and healthcare are in the budget books. We have a Big Belly contract, which is our trash receptacle contract. And we have the pet waste bins, which are the blue bins out in all the parks and our open spaces. Those are all under the management of Parks, Recreation, and Culture. And for the past year, we have been transfer billing to DPW because those budget funds were in that department. So just to clarify that the 2 dedicated employees are driving those routes every day. They're emptying trash receptacles. They're doing that in our parks. They're doing that for our school building properties as well as the village centers. And you'll also see them out assisting at a lot of our larger events in the city events and events that are run by many other community organizations. So really, when you take that portion out that's transferring from the DPW budget into the Parks and Recreation budget, the effective budget increase is going to be 4% in the budget proposal here. That's the increase year over year for Parks, Recreation, and Culture. So just hope that clarifies, and I'm guessing that maybe have been a question for some. So with that, I am going to ask, I believe Mark is going to be set as a co-host and can bring up our presentation. For everyone who's watching, I'm Nicole Banks. I'm the Commissioner of Parks, Recreation, and Culture. I'm joined tonight by our Deputy Commissioner and City Forester, Mark Welch. It probably wouldn't be a Programs and Services meeting here recently if Mark wasn't in attendance. He's been spending a lot of time here. And we are also joined, of course, by Jonathan Yo, our COO, who will be available to help answer questions as well. And we can go to the first slide, Mark, thanks. So just to review what our amazing team of professionals who do a wide variety of work in our community, I'm going to discuss each of our divisions in a little bit broader of a perspective and show some fun pictures as well. But I'd like to highlight one of our divisions here, the Administration Division. I always like to start with this small but mighty team of 3. They do the processing of all of our expenditure payments, including our ARPA and free cash funded capital projects. They onboard hundreds of summer staff on a seasonal basis for many of our programs, and they're permitting over 150 special events each year. So it's a large task. Everything that you see in this presentation that our team works on in the department is supported by these admin folks. And so we really just appreciate everything they do. Next slide. When you think about our department, you probably think about our recreation, community programs, and special events. I want to highlight what this is. Hopefully many of you have enjoyed these. It's one of the most important things we do as a city. We bring people together. We develop and nurture kids. Adults and seniors stay active and enjoy their neighborhoods. We play together, we celebrate together, and we build lasting memories. And these are just a few of the highlights of what we've seen over the past year. Our forestry division does all the planting, pruning, and sapling care for our street and city trees. The trees are very important. You see a few highlights here. Mark Welch has been doing quite a few presentations in the community about the value of trees and having forestry in our department. These are always something that we are considering and trying to save and make stronger in our parks and open spaces. So we have worked with Mayor Fuller, with our state delegation, with the Community Preservation Committee, with our community partner groups, and with all of you on the City Council to secure funds to improve so many of our parks and public grounds and recreation areas. These represent millions of dollars for projects, including things such as the Gaff Pool, Crystal Lake, Marty Center Path, Livingston Cove, community gardens, and athletic fields. The fields and pool projects alone are totaling over $15 million in non-budgeted funds that will be going back into our parks. These are so important. Each of these projects supports our schools and all of our community residents. Next slide. Our Parks and Open Space Division manages the planning, designing, coordinating with groups, steering and overseeing of projects. This planning work is undertaken by a two-person Parks and Open Space team. And I just want to share that here I'm sort of highlighting some of our mega projects that many of you will be familiar with. But this team also oversees our Adopt a Space program, coordinating with friends groups, and so much more. This represents some of the larger projects that we have completed or are in the process of completion. And of course, there's continued planning and assessment happening throughout that. This team is also planning our fields improvements and managing our capital projects for fields. And this is the 5-year plan. Sorry, Mark, we might need to go back one. Yeah, if we can stay here, thank you. This is a 5-year athletic plan that we've been working on, and we are going to be coming to you for a considerable amount of these projects, possibly toward the end of this month with our CPC request. This also includes items that have happened, such as the sports lighting and replacement of the artificial turf fields at both high schools. Next slide. So now I want to switch over and talk a little bit about our maintenance division and the maintenance budget that we have for the fields. Up until this point in the presentation, we've been talking a lot about things that have alternative budget sources. When it comes to the grounds maintenance and taking care of our properties, we are talking primarily about budget funds. It is really great for us to be able to invest in all of these areas and all of these things that we need to have the budget money to maintain. So our maintenance division is tending to all school and city building grounds. They're tending to courts, they're tending to playgrounds, fields, open space areas, fencing, snow clearing, trash removal, and more. Quite a bit to take care of. This slide is showing that over the past few years, Mayor Fuller has more than tripled the field maintenance funding. And so this is what we have been showing as all of the work that they are doing to invest in the fields. Having premier fields does require the continued investment into those fields. And this is where we have been talking about all the pieces that go into that. Investing in seed, investing in aeration, slice seeding, keeping up on those things every single year. Next slide. One interesting new item that we're able to share is that we are leasing a robotic field lining machine. This will be out and about in the fields starting this spring season. And it's really about making our team more efficient. So we're not going out with surveying equipment when it's time to line the fields at the beginning of the season. We can tell this machine exactly where we're located, the type of field, what size soccer field we want to put down. The dimensions will be programmed in, and the lines can easily be put down. This also allows us to shift and move those fields if there are some wear patterns or other reasons that we need to shift those throughout the season. So that's been a great tool to utilize. This is showing the lists. We have listed here the fields that we are maintaining to a premier level. So I mentioned investing those additional budget dollars into the premier sites. We work very closely with our sports group, and we identify what sites are the most important to invest in. This lists out all of those. It also builds in the projects that we are managing. So that holistic plan for maintenance and improvements into the athletic fields. Next slide. We, of course, are continuing to invest in our playgrounds. Next slide. We will need to keep investing into our existing and new park amenities. Next slide. we are maintaining over 100 courts. And so these are things that those maintenance budgets will be so critical to keeping up on over the years. Next slide. The next set of 6 slides highlights all of our budget outcomes. I won't read through each and every detail of these, but these are available in the budget book for those who want to read a little bit more about the department and the details of each of our outcome areas. They include pretty much everything that we've addressed here in the presentation tonight, but you can find out a little bit more about that and read a little more. Mark, if you just want to go through each slide. And with that, happy to, Mark, we can take the presentation down. If you'd like us to pull that back up or bring us back to anywhere within the presentation, happy to do that. And just would love to hear any questions and input on the budget from each of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. Appreciate the presentation and leaving time for questions. I have President Albright followed by Councilor Wright. So President Albright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a question for you first about the, that turf docket item that we put through maybe, I don't know, a month and a half ago. Do you have any idea of when you will be able to provide us information on, turfs versus grass fields, et cetera, all the questions that were in that docket item?
Absolutely. So we will be coming back to discuss the fields again with programs and services. I believe we were going to try to get that on the agenda perhaps sometime in early June. I don't have any clear date that's been set for it yet, but we do plan on coming forward. I did mention the artificial turf replacements that are at end of life, really at both high schools on all 3 of those fields. And then we do have a proposal that'll be coming forward soon for the Albemarle Field redevelopment. That is a CPA funded project, which has restricted funds. So that will require an alternate funding source, and that will be something we'll be back to discuss here at Programs and Services with some more information.
But that will be funded with ARPA funds. So,
okay.
Yep.
Good. Well, yeah, I'm glad to hear that you'll be coming back in June to tell us all that, the answers to all our questions.
Yeah, hopefully the answers to all your questions. And President Albright, we held a significant amount of community meetings too. So, all of those concerns and input that came in from the community, our team has been working hard to review different material choices, make material selections. So we'll certainly have a lot of background information to share on what we've been able to do, what will be changing with the new fields, the current fields that we have.
Great, thank you. And I wasn't clear on how, so when you made your comments about it's not really 10% increase, it's 4% increase, because, and that's because I want to make sure I understand, you're transferring staff from DPW to Parks and Rec, is that what it is?
It is 2 staff members, so it is their salaries and associated, other costs with that. It is a contract for the pet waste collection, which is a contract that we oversee and manage. And it is the Big Belly lease agreement. So it is the 1-year, first-year payment. We're getting brand new trash receptacles. The Big Belly program has redesigned their units. We will have upgraded units. Our current units are about 6 to 7 years old. So we will have new trash receptacles coming out, and that is the payment for that contract that we will receive. So basically the funds are currently in the last fiscal year, they were in the DPW budget, and that is just moving over here. So you'll see the decrease there and the increase in Parks and Recreation.
Okay, but there's still a very large increase in Parks and Rec. It looks like it's all, I don't know now, not sure what is that the total department increase is 785,000? Does that include everything that you just talked about?
Yes,
Not just personnel, it's all of those things.
correct.
Okay, got it.
That's the 10% she was referencing.
Yeah, yeah, got it now. Thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't say that I'm hoping the dog park bullet item, I was glad to see it here.
Yes, it's in there.
I was hoping to see some more, like a more concrete increase to the number of dog parks, like, you know, we're going to open 2 new dog parks this coming year, something like that. I
don't know if it'll be 2. So President Albright, you serve on the off-leash area working group. That's the group that our department works very closely with. We currently have 7 off-leash areas, and we are interested in expanding the program. The good news is that we have funding that has been set aside to reinvest in that program that comes from the off-leash area tags. And the fees that come in for that not only take care of maintaining and making some smaller improvements, but have built up to allow us to look at building a new site. So I'm looking to that working group to help us kind of prioritize. I think that there's some good, having one on the north side of the city has really been one of the main priorities. And we'd like to focus and work on one of those. As far as adding more, I think, you know, it's something for us to keep an eye on as we do park improvements. So if we're going to be in a location making some improvements, is that a site we should consider when we're going through a community process? You know, we would want to hear from people in the neighborhood and others who might enjoy that aspect. I'll just give an example, if you don't mind, President Albright. The one area that we are considering, I think it's our priority possibly, is going to be Walker Park. And so there's some improvements to the street there on Washington Street, and, you know, seeing if this can be discussed with the community as part of that project is looking like it could be an approach for us. But really, you know, we want to make sure we talk in the community, think about things that would be important for dog owners and important for dogs. So make it an enjoyable space. But yeah, I'd say one is probably a reasonable challenge for us for this coming year. And that bullet point is it's on there for that very reason.
Okay, well, I'll take one. I'll take one.
For now.
Community unification area, part of the budget seems to have had a good sized increase. Where's that money going? What is that going towards? Do you know?
Yeah, that is the area that we're highlighting with most of the trash disposal. So the 2 staff work in that division, and they are also have that large contract for the Big Bellies and the smaller contract for the pet waste. That's all in that beautification section.
Ah, okay, got it. And my last question is, how is, you know, you had a new fee structure that you put in place, and how is that going?
It's going well. I'm assuming you're talking about the athletic field fees.
Yes, yes.
Yep. So we've just completed our first year, and we did that in we have a scaffolded approach for that. So we started out at a lower fee of $10 per person per season. We worked with our sport groups to invoice them at the end of the season, so they had plenty of time to do their registrations, have all of their participation fees come in, and know their actual numbers so they could budget for that and put that in place. That has now gone through 3 whole seasons, and coming into this spring, we will be stepping up to $15 per person per season. And again, those will start being invoiced at the end of the season. So that would be at the end of the spring would be the first season for that second step.
Okay. I think people's confidence in the fee structure would go a long way in a positive direction if you could provide a report for how the money was spent in the past year. And so that they could have some confidence that their money that they're putting in is actually going into creating better fields and better field maintenance. So maybe you could think about doing that for the public's consumption.
Sure. We did have a presentation to at Public Programs and Services, and our website is tracking all of those meetings. So if anybody's interested in rewatching some of those and seeing some of the details, I mentioned here briefly tonight, the premier fields and the selected sites, but there's much more details in some of those presentations as well.
Yeah.
But we can work with grounds maintenance to talk about reporting strategies.
Okay, great. And that's all I have, but thank you very much for making the presentation tonight.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right, I have Councilor Wright followed by Noel. Councilor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Kurtzman. And I'm going to follow up from President Albright's number. So the revenue and how it's spent, what would be very helpful, maybe putting it on your website. So, and 2022, this is our revenue, and this is what went for 2023. And I was wondering, because it's nowhere in here, this is all where you're spending, how much was your revenue from last year, and what do you expect for revenue for this year?
For the athletic fields?
Anything that you're charging fees. I mean, fields will be one, but then you're charging for other places too, right?
We do. So we have many revolving funds, and that's where the fees are deposited to. So I do believe there's a report included in the budget book. Perry or Connor, do you know if there's a section of the budget book we can point everyone to?
But mostly the field fees. I mean, that's where a lot of people have concerns.
I mean, there is the grants, gifts, and revolving fund section in the budget book.
And does it pull out saying this is what are the field fees?
No, it does not.
Okay, it would be helpful. And that's something you could put up on your website. The next question is, I'm going through the budget, is the athletic field maintenance. It hasn't changed at 300,000. I thought that was going to be going up to like 500,000. That seems low.
So that was part of the override proposal, which did not pass. So the mayor has increased that over the last several years. We were not able to do it further this year without the override.
Okay, because I thought in previous presentations by Park and Rec without the override that they were increasing that. So okay,
we've never been able to predict exactly where our budgets were going. So it has been increased tremendously, as Nicole has presented in other forums. It has led to a huge increase in maintenance and the creation of these premier fields across the city, in addition to the new fields that we're building. So lots of investment going on and lots of maintenance.
Will 300,000 be enough just to maintain it? I mean, I was under the impression in previous presentations that would not be enough to maintain the fields.
It's the budget, the city budget plus the fees together is what is being used to create this new system of premier fields with a level of higher maintenance that is really needed. So that's been detailed recently to this committee.
Okay, so maybe that's why I'm thinking there's more money in the fields, and you're saying it's coming from the fees that we don't know what the fees are from a yearly basis estimating, or at least we don't have it here.
Well, we can get that information too.
It's not a big deal.
Okay, and just right above that, I was just wondering what it says, public park property RM. What is that?
Mark, do you see that line item?
It's 700,000.
Sure. Yeah, that's public property repair and maintenance. That is,
Okay.
most of that is the line item for mowing mowing grass,
Okay.
leaf removal, mulching, things like that. But it's mostly grass mowing.
Okay, and then since we have Mark right here, So, and I know part of this was on the override, the tree service, which I think also includes tree planting, and that is not changing from last year. So, and of course, we have a lot of inflation. So how much decrease in number of trees then is it going to go from last year to this year?
From a tree planting perspective, we won't know yet. Most of that money, the 700,000, that's our tree maintenance budget.
Okay.
That's from our contracted services. We have 2 more years at our current rate. So we are
Okay.
locked in. Nothing is going to change up or down from what we do now.
So where's
For planting, I won't know till we go to purchase our trees this fall. But I assume that it will decrease the number probably by about 5-10%.
where is that in the budget? I didn't know which line item that.
So it is ground maintenance supplies. I think it's $70,000 in the budget right now. That's where we
Okay.
purchase our trees from. That all the other planting, we do that in-house. So that's incorporated into our staff.
Okay, thank you on that one. Going through this, sorry. You did explain why it went up, how you transferred the 2 people. I was looking and why the increase in the budget. Where did the snow and ice go? Who's covering that? What department? It seems like it wasn't yours and it just kind of disappeared.
So snow and ice is I'll hop in. That's okay, Commissioner. Snow and ice is in the DPW budget. It's been
Okay.
there for a number of years.
Yeah, it's showing up here. I was just wondering. Okay, just a few more questions. So it says consult with under outcomes 3, consult with sports group to formalize ongoing maintenance agreement work. Like what is that exactly is meant by that, and what groups and what kind of maintenance?
So that is, that refers to pretty much our tier 2 groups, which are our Newton Youth Program groups. Those are the groups that have implemented the field fee that is going to the $15 per person per season this year. And so that is working with those groups. They have specific fields that are sort of their home fields. And if anything is changing as far as their priorities shifting, we would work with them to, make determinations on which fields would get the higher level of maintenance. We can't treat all of the fields. We don't, we aren't able to treat them all to that same level. And then, of course, we have a lot of open space areas that don't require that amount of funding. So it's really looking at those specific sites that are used for sports and athletics.
Commissioner, you also work very closely with tennis and pickleball and bocce and the playground user groups and other types other than fields.
Yes.
All of your courts and other activities, you're working with those user groups as well in prioritizing repairs and maintenance.
Okay. In the mayor's budget on Monday, she mentioned, which I was kind of surprised by this, Albemarle will be the second mainly Newton North high school field, but I thought a lot of other groups use that field. So are they getting less opportunity there, and are they going elsewhere? But I know field time is an issue for a lot of groups. So
synthetic turf is a game changer in terms of amount of hours that can be used on a field. So Newton North will be able to use it as their second field. And so they will have plenty of time for the many different teams that they need to get onto fields. And in addition, other groups then can also use that field. So the challenge right now with that field is it's loved to death. It's such a well-used field, and as you drive by, you live near there, it's beaten up. It doesn't survive the season, and that's why that location is needed to be converted to synthetic turf with Newton North as a primary tenant, essentially. And I would say they're not here tonight, but Principal Turner and Mike Jackson, the AD, are both incredibly excited about this, and they have a whole list of teams that are ready to use it.
But the other Newton teams, youth sports, will not lose their time on that
They're
field.
gonna have lots of time, because of the fact that it's synthetic turf. There'll be many more hours available. And also, Nicole, you're changing out the light system.
Yep, so
there
because
as
that's
well.
a lighted field, it will be able to handle the
Much better
impacts and
lights.
expand the total amount of time that'll be available on that field. Also keep in mind, if the high school does need to centralize certain sports and have them at the, a home base at Albemarle, then that will open up other fields where they may have previously. So all of those North athletic sports are being accommodated on the city fields right now. So we don't expect, it's not going to increase. It's just going to shift how fields get allocated and the total amount of time of allocation we'll have available.
Okay, thank you. I have just two more quick questions. I didn't know what these are. In your introduction and stuff, you talk about Gaga pit installation. What's Gaga pits?
So Gaga pits are to host a game that's played with like a playground ball, the red rubber ball. It sort of looks like an octagon, and you're enclosed in a low, like 3-foot walled area. There are very specific rules for Gaga, and you throw the ball and you get other people out.
Dodgeball.
Playing through those rules. It's kind of like dodgeball, but it's within the Gaga pit.
And on the ground.
Yes, and it's all low play, so there's no throwing like above the waist. And it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of schools that have been asking for these. So our department has been assisting with those installations and where to site those on the property. So
And what is a sensory dome play structure?
the sensory dome play structure is a piece of equipment, play equipment that has been selected by the Friends of Wellington Park. It is a piece of Compan equipment is the name of the company. And it is kind of unique. It has a lot of play features that can be utilized from the ground level. It's very inclusive in that way, and provides for a lot of different type of play than some of the other more traditional play structures that we have in other parks and at schools.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it for me.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. And if you want to play Gaga, go by one of the elementary schools. I'm sure you can challenge some of the kids there.
Probably gets a little rough if those rules don't get followed.
Councilor Noel, followed by Oliver. Councilor Noel.
Thank you. We do need to move this along because I got to be at my Gaga pit at 7 a.m. tomorrow. So let's get cooking here. Okay, so what I want to say is that I just, having sat in programs and services now this last cycle, I just want to give a big hats off to the staff of programs and services. Nicole, her role, Louise, the amount of heat you guys take, the amount of projects you're involved in, and your responsiveness to the public. Mark Welch is wading through this tree ordinance. Your patience, you're not even elected, so you don't have to be patient, but you are. And I'm so appreciative of the way you guys weather this stuff. You handle it like pros, you're responsive on the weekends, and all your projects are very public. And so there's usually a high level of investment from the community. And I just think, as someone who sometimes gets a little hot-headed, you guys never lose your cool. And I'm very impressed by that. So I really, hats off to your staff.
Thank you, Councilor Noel. It's a great team, and we've just been amazed. We're currently managing just about $20 million in capital projects. It's incredible. So
well done. Well done.
Thank you, Councilor Noel. Councilor Wright, your hand is still up, and I'm guessing that's a remnant. Councilor Oliver, followed by Downs. Councilor Oliver.
Great, thank you, Chair Krinsman. I will echo Councilor Noel's commentary, and just in an effort to get her on that Gaga court, I'll move on. I did just want to direct our attention to revolving funds. It's kind of one of the white tabs at the end of your budget books. I am kind of curious. One of the things that, just looking at this budget book, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit to the FY24 requests that are listed here. I know that they are, you know, generalizations. That's the point of having them. But they do seem to be, some of them anyway, seem to be incredibly high given the throughput or the expenditures that are shown for the past few years. And I'm just wondering, like, if you could just talk through like how these numbers were arrived at, just in general. We're going to be digging into revolving accounts in much more detail in the next few months or in a few months from now. And I am curious, like on the subsequent page, there's a page that breaks out in more detail 4 of the accounts. And I'm just wondering if you could include like why those 4 were chosen as out of this list of, I don't know what's in here, like 15 or 16. That'd be great.
So I can start with a general overview of the revolving funds, and then Mark, I'll let you add.
And Carrie
anything on-
can help out on this as well.
Yeah, about how the requests are made, because basically, you know, each budget season, we make a budget estimated request that needs to cover all of our expenses for anything that is operating through those revolving funds. So we never want to be short on our requests, but any funds that aren't expended stay in those revolving funds. So there's no fear of, you know, losing that money or having that money reallocated. But our department does rely on our revolving funds for running our services, and we have many of them. I'm going to say I do not know the 4 you're referring to that are broken out, so maybe we can get some more information on that next. But let me just give, I'll give an example of the camps. So for our camps, we have revolving funds that are to operate and manage our camp programming. These revolving funds pay for and support all of the staffing. They pay for all of the supplies, any expenses. It could be custodial fees in the building that we're in. The full budget needs to be covered by the revenue that gets taken in by each of those programs. So, you know, we're basically building out a program budget, and we are utilizing the revolving funds to be able to be flexible with the programs we run. If we want to add more campers to a particular program and we are able to secure staff to do so, we can be very flexible in expanding those. The alternative to having a revolving fund to be able to manage that, because then we have the fees that we charge come back in and we'll replenish that fund. The alternative would be in our operating budget, we would need to request our full operating expenses. The staffing alone to run the summer camp programs would be well over $1 million. That would increase in our operating budget. So, and if we hit a point where we didn't have enough operating budget set aside, then we wouldn't have that flexibility to add a program that might be of interest to the community or expand a program to be able to take more participants if we have the resources to be able to do that. So that's sort of the benefit for, you know, having the revolving fund, basically utilizing the revenue that comes in to support and pay all of those expenses.
Right. So then I'm just curious, like just if we kind of focus in on the camp program revolving, and there's a, well, okay, that's just a comment. Never mind. So the camp program revolving, right? The cap is put at 2.5 million for FY24. For the previous, well, I'll ignore 21. But for the previous 2 years, right, it was 650 and 760. And assuming that the total, like all the expenses you just mentioned, Commissioner, come out of that revolving fund, I'm just curious, like the vast majority of these amounts are 4 to 10 times the past couple years worth of expenses. And I'm just wondering if maybe like not all of those expenses are coming out of the revolving funds. Maybe some of them, like staffing, like you just mentioned, which is a significant chunk of it, might, I don't know, work through a different account.
So a couple of pieces in there. It's not necessarily that all of the expenses have to come out of the revolving fund. So in some of our funds, so for example, the aquatics does have some operating budget funding. And those are cases where we are, basically as a city supplementing with operating budget to manage the fees that we charge for that program. And that's okay. Some of the expenses can come from the revolving and some from operating. Your question about what the requested budget amount is really, as a department, we have to make a decision at a snapshot in time. And we have to try to estimate what we believe that coming year will require for an allocation. So we don't want to underestimate that. And, because there is no way then to expand beyond that. There's not a lot of risk in estimating in the other direction because that money does just stay there. But it's certainly something we can take a look at along with our financial team and see if that it is worth changing what those requests are from our department. Mark, do you have anything else historically? Because I would also just add that these last several years, it's been very challenging. I mean, our program's closed completely for the first year, and we are not back to our full services yet. One of the main things that's challenging is the staffing levels, finding staff to be able to come back to full program offerings. But Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. And you pretty much just said what I was going to point out, was that at least on the recreation, for many of our things, but on the recreation program side, we haven't had a normal year in 4 years. We can't, even when we want to run programs, even with us being open, if you will, with COVID behind us, we can't find staff and we can't run all the programs that we've run in the past. Additionally, we ran into some problems with one of our tennis being one of our more popular programs that is one of these pieces of this revenue. And, we had some challenges there over the last year or two. So we just haven't had the revenue. And certainly, like the commissioner said, there is that cushion, that space if we happen to, take in, we start a new program, have other programs that take off, and we have build that revenue in the year. But I wouldn't, the last couple of years, it's not just the year of COVID, it's the last couple of years, we have not been back to anywhere near normal as far as our ability to launch all these programs. This year, I think, is going to be, our upcoming year is going to be a kind of getting back to normal for many of our stuff.
Great. I appreciate it. I get the gist of it. I kind of figured it was something along those lines, but I just wanted to direct some attention to it. But I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I have Councillor Downs followed by Ryan. Councillor Downs.
Thank you so much. I'll keep this very brief as brief as I can anyway. I really want to applaud and I'm relieved that Echo Bridge and such programs are still going on, both for adults and for young children, and all of the accessibility and outcome for programs. I just really appreciate that Parks and Rec focuses there as well as on our senior population. I also wanted to call out the plans that include vital additional services that aren't usually under the Parks and Rec umbrella, but which progressive parks organizations are taking into account: pollinator gardens, stormwater management, no-mow areas to save on mowing and on the emissions from lawn care where we don't need to do that. I'm excited to see Crystal Lake improvements, Gaff Pool improvements, and particularly improvements to the connectivity on the Upper Falls Greenway in anticipation of Northland doing Splash Park and some improvements on their side of what has become a neighborhood asset for Upper Falls, one of our more dense neighborhoods and with an environmental justice history. Couple of quick questions. I note that we are tracking the number of street trees and their health, and have a budget for tree maintenance for street trees. When do we get to parks? Trees that grow in parks and their regeneration.
Is the question, when do we maintain the trees in parks or plant trees in parks?
When do we do both? To start focusing on those guys.
So from a tree planting perspective, we just planted a lot of trees over the last several years in parks and public spaces as part of the 4C for the COVID plantings that were done, memorial planting. As far as tree pruning or tree work in our parks, we address hazardous or risk trees in areas where people are frequently. So that's ongoing. We do that now. As far as proactive, more management of trees in natural areas, we do small amounts of that on very specific projects when we're able to fit it in, but that's not something that we have. We're not able to do that with our street trees, let alone, we're not able to get to the parks either in that proactive way.
Okay. Thanks. I appreciate the answer. I'm delighted we're doing some building of trails and walking areas and accessible walking areas. But we do own some trails or have maintenance responsibility for trails on the aqueduct, the Cochituate Aqueduct and parts of the Sudbury. And I'm wondering, that MJ will mow the sides and that's great, but we have been walking on the Cochituate Aqueduct for over a century. And as far as I know, the publicly owned parts of it have not been maintained at all. Can we get some idea of some future time when those might get some, where the tree roots are presenting a tripping hazard, when those can get maintained, or when we can perhaps get some box stairs where we're seeing some erosion on those?
So I believe we have 2 aqueducts, and I think there's some areas that we maintain and some we do not maintain. So we might need to just get a little bit more information on what you're seeing and take a look if that's something that we are able to maintain. I do think we've done some maintenance along certain portions of the aqueducts. Mark, do you know any more on if we've been in there recently?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak fully to the piece. I can speak to the portions that abut the like things like Cold Spring Park. That is areas that we do work on as far as the trails go. As far as tree work goes, if there's a tree blocking or a tree issue, we do them all, and we always do. There's access issues in some areas, but for the Cochituate, we do that whenever we're asked to look at something and address it.
Yeah, there's also ownership issues too. We don't own whole sections of the trail. So if there's a known safety problem, let's identify that and see who and how that could be dealt with.
Okay.
That I think, let us know, please. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you so much. That does it for me, Chair.
All right, Councillor Ryan, followed by Baker. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one kind of question and a comment. On the community gardens at Nahanton Park, there is a fee for them. And I was wondering, I met with myself and Council Larry met with Luis. I wish he was on the call tonight. About the upkeep and the maintenance and kind of the disrepair up there and people not following the rules. I have the policy brochure with me with the fee structure and all that. I was just, is that under like the parks line item? And is there any money actually put aside for that? just the community garden area?
There is, so we do manage the community gardens at Nahanton, and there is a small fee for the garden plots there. So those fees are in an account set aside for that. So we did just start the new season, and as part of that, we invested some of the funding into a cleanup. There was about 9 or 10 sites that really needed significant cleanup, and we had a contractor come in to do that work. That also allowed us to make some of those plots available again, which was really great because we did have some folks who were on a wait list for those. And so I want to say we had about 6 to 9 new plots that were provided to new members of the gardening community there. So yes, those are things that we do have, some policies and rules. We do maintain and manage who is in those gardens. We can communicate out, we can get information out. And, it's managed and overseen by our programming division. So certainly I am aware of the recent ones that were discussed. Luis has been taking a look at that area, as has Stephanie Lapham.
Okay, that's good to hear. I did get a couple of complaints from people, constituents, and the fact that, so the plots that were freed up, were they just abandoned, or was there a rules infraction that was enforced?
It was a mixture. There was a lot of invasive growth on some that had been abandoned, and there was a few from members who hadn't yet re-enrolled and paid the fees for the coming year. So I think there might have been one individual who basically was not able to renew this year, but everything else was just sort of turnover, needing to get those cleaned back up and then reissued out to community gardeners who will take care of them.
Okay, and the other thing is the beehives.
Yes.
Do we regulate that? Parks and
So
Rec?
that is Parks Land. So yes, we do regulate that. We have started the process of looking into setting some policies for that. We do not currently have
Right.
any written policies in the department. We have some really great groups who are helping us review that, comparing what some other communities have. It's interesting because there's different types of bees, and some bees don't get along with other
Right.
bees. So there's more work that needs to be done before I think we can set up a policy. But that is something that we're interested in and currently working on. And I think, I wouldn't say we're looking to completely ban the beehives, but having a management plan for that space, because it's kind of a big space, but there's a lot of hives at Nahanton.
Yeah, I don't want to see the hives banned, but I did talk to people up there on a couple of occasions that knew a lot about it, and they didn't want to get rid of them either, but they said that some of the bees were different species and they weren't getting along, or were going to kill the other bees, and they're very close to the gardens, but yeah, I'd like.
Conservation has some policies within the city, so they're helping us as well, and we'll lean on them to learn from what has worked in our conservation spaces.
Yeah, that'd be great if that came under you and we charged a little fee for that, and it was safe and people felt confident. I'll go up and look at the space again. And the only other thing I have to say is I really appreciate all the work that you, Deputy Commissioner Welch and Luis do, that I've worked with. Every time I call, I get a quick response. I don't call a lot, but when I do, I get a quick response from either you, Commissioner, or Commissioner Welch, and Luis is great. I wish he was on the call. It has been a hard year. It's been a few things going on in Ward 8 that we've had to deal with that have been very contentious, but we got them done for the betterment of the city itself. And I'm sure there's more fights to come, but I think that you're doing a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'll also put a plug in for Spears Park. We are looking at expanding and having a second community garden there. And Councilor Greenberg's been very involved with us on that project.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker.
Well, thank you. And Commissioner, thank you for your efforts and your staff. I think we all appreciate what has been done and what is being done. I mean, been done and is proposed. The question I just had is I want to express appreciation for the cleanup at the Wobbin Hill Reservoir in terms of the foliage. I just wondered what opportunity, speaking of cleanup, you have to get somebody back to clean up the stuff that's been tossed into it, just as a way of making sure that everything that you invested in stays that way.
We don't currently have a set date, but as you know, it's something we're keeping a close eye on. We have some really great neighbors and yourself who have kept us up to date on if things are in the water, in the reservoir. And of course, then we have the plantings on the side. Mark, do you recall, was it 6 months or so ago that we were in there for that previous cleanup?
For the trees, for clearing the vegetation, yes, I think it was December. I think we did it in December is when we ended up getting in there.
Yeah, that was great. If we can get our volunteer back, maybe we can get some of the junk out of the bottom.
That was a creative solution. We can put it back on our list and see. I think we had kind of talked about, trying to look at that each year and determine what a good length would be. But we know that's going to be a challenging site, and it's the access is the challenging piece.
Cleared out now before everything becomes foliated again. I would encourage taking a look at it sooner rather than later, because you did a good job on the tree clearing, which I thought was really to your credit. So anyway, I don't want to take much time, and Mr. Chairman, whenever there's an opportunity to move the straw vote in favor of the budget, I'd do it, but maybe others want to.
Chair Krinsman, if I could I say one thing before you do that?
Sure.
Two things. Just want to thank two of the Parks and Rec Commission members. I think there's two here, Gloria Gavris and John Rice, former Alderman Councilor. Thank you for their assistance on our commission. And secondly, I just want to note some upcoming, there's an upcoming free cash item that is related to Parks and Rec, and that is a request. If you recall, I think it's 2 years ago, we had 2 Boston marathons in 1 year. So we got a double payment from the BAA for the marathon. And we're going to be using that money. We're proposing to use that money to put up poles at the top of Heartbreak Hill for the new Heartbreak Hill banner that has been put up the last 2 years on a temporary basis. We're looking to make that permanent, and also to do some playground improvements in the city as well, which is a traditional source of funding, the BAA money for playground improvements. And then secondly, using ARPA funds, which will not come before the council, but are very important. I know you're all interested in many of these projects, everything from some improvements at Crystal Lake Beach and bathhouse area to call it the Newton Center Field House, but that's the hut. And that's to do some painting and some shingle work to that historic building, and also some exterior work to the Albemarle Field House that will not be covered by the Gath Pool project. And also, very importantly, to create a second bridge over Cheesecake Brook for access and for better parking to our new and improved facilities. And I think there's another one, Newton North, the Newton, I mentioned the Newton North synthetic turf field, I mentioned that. Also tennis court resurfacing, something we had hoped to build into the override, but we're going to use some free cash to at least get a year's worth of tennis court improvements in the city. So and also we're doing some survey work in the Hampton Park, because we need to complete a conservation restriction on that park. And that was part of the temporary use of that park as a fire station, if you recall, about 10 years ago. So we need to finish that up. So there's a bunch of things that are happening with ARPA and proposed with free cash coming up. And, the commissioner mentioned all of the other funding sources that are being used. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
Thank you. I want to just ask one question. I noticed in the introductory portion, you referenced the planning and design of the outdoor performance amphitheater at Newton Center Playground. And I know that there had been some opposition to that. So I was just curious, what was the status of that project?
So we are still working on the feasibility study for that. I believe this was ARPA funding as well, previously allocated ARPA funding. So that funding and that study are still exist. Last summer, we did 3 different locations. So at our different concerts, we moved the performance area around within the park. We tried to see what was best for the performers, what was most liked by our audience, and taking a look at the Newton Center Park, how we could make it work with the landscape, keeping that open green space that everybody is, really cherishes. So that was part of our first round. We did a survey, got some community feedback. So now we need to go through that survey feedback and present some of that information and start our community input sessions again. We haven't picked an exact time to do that, but we will be picking that back up soon.
And Commissioner Memo just mentioned that a small pavilion was just completed or is about to be completed in the Cabot Park as well, if you want to mention that.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I'd love to mention a couple of things. We have, you saw the caterpillar at Woburn Common on the front page of our presentation. This Saturday, we're doing a dedication there. This Sunday is Newton Serves, and we have, I think, close to 45 sites that are being worked on by volunteers throughout the city. So just a huge impact in the parks. And then the Cabot Pavilion will likely be having a grand opening sometime at the beginning to mid-June. And it is a small covered structure that can be utilized for outdoor classroom space, arts and performance space, and just general use by park visitors to have some shade and a nice space to get together. It turned out great. We worked with, I think it was the Mass Architectural School. The students designed, presented to the community, and did the build themselves. And there was some funding put aside from the previous Cabot project to supply the materials. So it turned out great. I think it's really something for people to check out and kind of see how it works in a park, how it gets utilized by people in a park, and provides that sort of gathering space and nice opportunity for entertainment or education or whatever the activity might be.
Thank you. Appreciate the information. I just want to add my voice to the chorus of appreciation for the work that you guys do, how responsive you are to all the requests that we make and we have made and will probably continue to make. And the really extraordinarily stepped up efforts that we've seen over the past couple of years to take care of our parks and our fields and our playgrounds. I know that I've been really focused on the fields, the recreational fields, and getting our kids more ability to use those fields more hours. And I think we've made great strides in all the work that we've done. So thank you. Because it's in scope, I just want to say that I am appreciative of all the CIP projects that have been added in that vein. I think it's terrific. I think we are, finally sort of dedicating the appropriate amount of resources to those assets, and our residents are going to see the benefits of that for years to come. Councilor Noel, I'm sorry, your hand is up.
Thank you. So I don't want to take us too far afield on topic, but I was struck by when Mr. Yo said there's remaining funds from the BAA, which I'm assuming we get because we're a host community. And, I'm wondering if there's an appetite, considering what happened this year, to reallocate some of those funds to better understand how we can support people that come to cheer the marathon, whether they be residents or people from outside the community. It seems like that would be an appropriate use of those funds if if we get those funds because we are hosts of the marathon, that we would want to be better hosts. And again, better understand what happened this year and maybe do some training so it doesn't happen again.
We can talk, we can talk about that when we get to the free cash item coming up. And I believe you all have a PS&T, Andrea. You have a docket item that you're going to be talking about some of these issues coming up. So
We do, and just for my colleagues' information, I've cleared PS&T meetings because we don't have a heavy schedule outside of that item, and some others that need some more preparation. So May, we will not hold a PS&T meeting, and since I'm away the first meeting in June, it'll come up the second meeting in June.
Excellent. Just seems like a good opportunity, good use of those funds. So I look forward to talking about that. I'm a co-docketer on that items, but I hadn't seen it on the calendar yet. And I do think, it's a timely matter. So thank you.
All right, thank you. I believe Councillor Baker has moved for a straw vote approval of an $8,411,339 budget. Do I have that motion correct, Councillor Baker?
That's correct.
Great. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? I believe that is also 8-0. That is the last item on our agenda for this evening. I want to thank you all. We will reconvene and discuss more budget stuff. Thank you all and have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Aye.
Bye.